I'd like to call this Finance Committee agenda, this meeting to order. First announcement is that Legislator John Burke will not be with us tonight. He's not feeling well. I would like a resolution for approval of tonight's agenda. Mr. Perkins, second by Mr. Smithers and Mrs. Haggard. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. A resolution for the approval of the minutes for July 26. Mr. Perkins, second by Ms. Piacco. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. First up, we have a New York Power Authority Renewable Energy Opportunities presentation, and it's by Casey Master, who is a Senior Key Account Executive. Casey, are you with us?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for your time. Again, I'm Casey Mastro, Senior Key Account Executive with the New York Power Authority. I am joined by my colleague, Vinelli Adhadi, who is a manager in our Clean Energy Advisory Services group. We put together a short slide deck for your perusal and review during our time here. This opportunity we're very grateful for. It's a secondary opportunity that stemmed initially from a conversation that we had with St. Lawrence County representatives several weeks ago. And so we're looking forward to describing to you in more detail what our service offering encompasses, how it can be of value to the county, and allow you hopefully plenty of time to answer ask any questions, provide any comments that you may have on the potential development of some sites that we've been preliminarily discussing with county representatives for some time. So this presentation will primarily be driven by Vanilla, and I'll be helping drive that conversation and answers to all questions. So I'll let Vanilla introduce herself, and we can jump right into it.
Right, wonderful. Thank you, Casey. Good afternoon, everyone. As Casey has introduced, I'm Vanilla Adhadi. I'm manager of the Clean Energy Advisory Services group here at the New York Power Authority. I will share my screen, and please do let me know when you're able to see it. Please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
All right, wonderful. I'm going to put it in slide shared mode. So are you still able to see actually the full slide or the notes with the next slide on?
Full
slide, yeah.
All right, wonderful. All right, so thanks again, and we can go ahead and get started. I believe NYPA does not need any introduction to the folks that are in the room or anybody in this meeting, but just as an overview, we're a state-owned utility, and that does not basically use taxpayers' funds to run the entity. And that's because we generate our own revenues through the generation projects we have, along with the transmission infrastructure that NYPA owns and operates. So 20% of New York State's electricity is generated by NYPA. And of the 20% of the energy that's generated or provided to the state, 80% of it is produced through hydro. So similar to St. Lawrence County that already offtakes, I think, for some parts from NYPA, it is already green power. And we own and operate over 30% of the transmission infrastructure in the state, and expanding and developing on that to support a majority of the renewable energy projects, including some of the offshore wind projects that are coming online in New York State. The over $300 million is invested into energy efficiency projects to support our customers, along with creating more than 400,000 jobs in the state through the different economic development programs NYPA has. When we're talking about this organization, NYPA is always thinking about how do we further support our energy advisory services team that has evolved. And since its inception, this team is a dedicated team. All we do is customer-sited renewable energy projects. We call it because it's customer-sited. We're talking about smaller scale, mostly connecting to the distribution grid. So these are distributed energy resources. And that's why, the Clean Energy Advisory Services team is also known as the DER. That's the Distributed Energy Resources Advisory Team. So the benefit we bring is we've come up with a streamlined program structure and a procurement process that helps public entities to take advantage of complete, like turnkey solution project provisions to our customers. So we act as, in short, we act as owner's rep or owner's advisor on these projects, all the way from doing very early feasibility studies to actually full-fledged completion, providing project management oversight for completion and execution of the project itself, that is the true implementation, all the way until commercial operation. And of course, what I boast about is that because we are the New York Power Authority, even once the systems are operating, we are still around and we're still here. So if there is ever a concern anytime about the ongoing or operating projects, you could still always knock on our doors. So some of the advantages here again. The renewable market in general is very volatile and dynamic, especially in New York State, because of course we are special in every way, correct? No pun intended there. So the policy to the financing of the project itself varies almost on a daily basis, and sometimes we see the policy changes even on an hourly basis, which is in a way concerning, but our team actually dreams in solar panels, and that hasn't turned into nightmares yet. So we take pride in that as well. So, but to keep things more streamlined and get the best value to our customers, making sure that the best available incentives are made available, because most of the incentives, whether at state level or federal, are on a first come, first serve basis, or they have a duration, like they continue to taper down, typically based on the timeline. So both time is of essence always for these projects, and also the other one is the scale. So we take into consideration all of these things, and we've actually come up with NYPA went out and issued a solicitation publicly for renewable developers to the project that were done early on. There were, not saying whether they're large developer or small developers, just because of the marketplace, there have been incidents where a developer could not continue to keep up with the project through the term of the contract, and that is concerning to a lot of public sector customers especially. So what NYPA has done is that NYPA has a pre-qualified pool of vendors, and when we develop the entire request for proposals all the way through the solicitation and everything through our streamlined procurement processes, and we have the ability to either go through a public solicitation process or a public RFP, or we have the ability to go to our pre-qualified pool of vendors and ask them for a quick turnaround on the pricing. It's still competitive bidding either way. And most of the developers that are local to New York State, local to specific regions, work or operate nationally and also globally are all on our list. So it makes things a lot more easier. This shows, I think I kind of briefly touched upon this, the different phases that we can support our customers with. That is from the very early, I would call it inception slash conception of the project or the portfolio, doing the technical feasibility, the economic viability, and all of that, considering the then current market conditions, all the way to developing the RFP, going through the bid process and bid evaluation process, to ongoing project management support. I want to take a quick pause there to see if there are any questions before we move on to the next slide.
If you don't have any, you may continue, please.
Wonderful. All right. So this is just a very high-level overview of our pipeline and projects actually in development at different stages. We work with all public sector, whether that's New York State agencies or other governmental sectors, entities, including municipalities. So we're doing a portfolio for Westchester County where we're developing projects at 8 of their sites. That portfolio is a very unique combination, and that's where we have the flexibility under the same procurement mechanism or under the same RFP to evaluate pricing, whether our customers are interested in, let's say, outright owning the project as a capital budgeted project, or want to offtake 100% of the energy under, let's say, a power purchase agreement contract, or if it's just want to host the project under a community solar model so they can provide affordable clean energy to their constituents. And Westchester County is a combination where we're doing a few projects under a power purchase agreement model where the county will offtake 100% of the energy and will pay the developer $1 per kWh or a unit cost for each unit of energy that's produced from the system. The other half of the portfolio is being developed under a community solar model, where the constituents of the county, whether that's residents like me, that's the beauty about community solar. And I have a program structure I'll show you in a little bit here, because it's for people like me. I'm an apartment dweller, and I do this job not because it's a job, but because this is truly what I believe in, and I want to be doing renewables. And I can say the same for my entire team. We're very passionate about this. Unfortunately, while I can claim that I have a ceiling, I don't necessarily have a roof. And that's where I think New York State's community solar model is really beautiful, where it gives people like me an opportunity to offtake from clean energy and local solar projects, basically. So the Westchester County is a combination of both systems, or both approaches. City of White Plains, we are recently developing, the projects are in construction. It's also a community solar portfolio at 9 of the city-owned properties and under a community solar model. The City of White Plains, the city is also off-taking a portion of the energy to offset their own bills. And about 40% of the energy will be off-taken by the city, along with hosting the project. And the remainder of the 60% goes to what we call the mass market subscribers, that's residents and small commercial entities within the city. A few of the customers, as you can see the list, we are working with New York City, developing a portfolio across 53 of their sites, their Department of Education's K through 12 schools, and also 6 water treatment facilities belonging to the Department of Environmental Protection. We do work with quite a few other agencies within the city as well. City of Albany, we're doing a community solar project where it's not actually being implemented on the city sites, but actually they're off-taking from local projects because there are some challenges with their own properties for developing communities, developing solar in general. So we look at opportunities of what serves the best need of our customers and make sure that we are still able to meet their objective, and not just, it's not like a private developer or a private consultant that pushes the project down, but truly provide that full transparency as to whether our customer should move forward with a certain project or whether it's not economical, or which of the options would be the most economical and or provide the best value to them in terms of both economics, but also when I say best value, in terms of the overall goals and objectives. So typical contract structure that includes both the project contract structure, but also NIPA's, is that NIPA will execute a contract, what we call an advisory services agreement with our customer. Most of the feasibility work and everything else that we develop is at no upfront cost to our customer. The way we developed our model is to make sure that the impact or the financial impact to our customers is minimized to the extent possible. However, we are mandated by our board to recover the cost that is basically for my time and the rest of the team that spends time on the project. So it's truly for man hours, and it's typically a lump sum, what we call advisory services cost recovery fee. But when we go into the RFP phase, we include what the advisory services fee should be in the RFP, so there's full transparency, and actually recover that through the developer. Once the project goes into implementation, it will be paid in milestone payments, and that way it's not incurred by our customer at all. We have actually formal feedback in several cases from the developers as well, where if the developer were to do all the due diligence, typically that is otherwise performed by NIPA, because they're a private entity and because of their rates and structure, it costs them a lot more. So NIPA doing the upfront development actually makes it very easy for the developers, and they're also looking at a portfolio that's almost a definite happening to like definite project. So that factor reduces the risk for the developers, and they're more than happy to pay the advisory services. Just based on the projects that we have in the portfolio and how we have operated, this cost turns to be a very small the lower single digit fraction of the overall project cost. So that's where developers see value in what NIPA bringing in as well, and have no issues ever actually paying it. We have never been contested or challenged by either customers or developers on our advisory services model. So the other one that I have to the left here, where I talk about the host site and the anchor subscription, is what our customers would typically execute with the solar developer, especially under a community solar model. So the host site agreement could take multiple, in a way, phases or multiple mechanisms. It could be the straightforward and the most preferred by the solar industry is a lease agreement. We do, because of the project's lifetime itself, based on the technology, which could be upwards of 30, 35 years, based on the latest technology or the current technology, developers prefer at least a 25-year lease agreement, especially for community solar models. And also because some of the incentives to the credits or the revenue streams that are available, especially for the current state policy, are dictated and logged in for the period of 25 years on most projects as well. So there are definite revenue streams that the developers want to take advantage of. That should minimize the risk and the concerns our customers also have about will they be able to pay us the lease payments moving forward, because the system, as long as the system's producing, the developers are realizing their revenues, and as long as the developers realizing their revenues, there should be no problem paying the, if you want to call it, the rents or the lease payments to our customers. The second option is if there are concerns, which I do tend to see with government sectors, especially talking about municipalities, executing a very long-term lease agreement. The second option is a license agreement. So it could be a revocable or irrevocable. Either lease or license agreement will come with a termination schedule that the developer will provide information on upfront, and that can be included in the contract in case a contract needs to be terminated before the end of the term. So that's on the project side. And as I've explained, we start with just a simple authorization to proceed memorandum. It's just a one-page, non-committal, non-binding memo that we share with our customers for NYPA to start the work on behalf of you, start the development of the RFP once we finish the feasibility, et cetera. And as we're going through the development of the RFP process, in parallel, we typically execute an advisory services agreement, which is also, Casey, jump in here anytime, of course, you're more familiar with those contracts too, which is also really a non-comprehensive. I'm an engineer by nature and not a counsel, but when I spoke to customers about some of the advisory services agreement, they did ask me if I'm a counsel, so I'll take that as a compliment. And if I'm able to understand as an engineer, I would say it's a very simple contract again. So, Casey, do you have anything to add there?
I would say that the two contracts working in tandem together represent NYPA's ability to encompass both project-specific information in an authorization to proceed, which would then get expanded upon in a statement of work. And the terms and conditions agreement is an overarching agreement that is not project-specific. It's generally a one-time signature terms and conditions agreement that is represented for all capital projects for all of our customers. So those two documents together are generally all we need to move things forward to what we call a design kickoff meeting, where we would actually get boots on the ground and start talking about the beginning of work, essentially.
Thanks, Casey. So the next one, what I wanted to show is just talk about the high-level structure of how community solar works, which I've briefed a little bit, but also we went ahead and looked at one of the sites that are one of the county-owned properties to assess whether it's viable for solar or not, and if we were to move forward with the project, how the economic value to other benefits look like to the county and your constituents. So a community solar typical project structure in New York State. I can walk you through just this graphic here to the left. The county will be the site host, and you will have the opportunity, to be an anchor subscriber. What that means is you'll have the opportunity of the energy that is produced from the system, 40% of the energy, the county will receive bill credits on its utility bills, and that should be an IOU. Unfortunately, right now, the current state policy only allows these credits to be applied to investor-owned utilities, so that's such as National Grid, and it is not available through muni-operated systems. So we were looking at one of the sites that's in Messina. Of course, it's just looking at from a very high level, and I believe that particular region is served by the Messina Electric District. So most likely that project cannot fall under community solar model as the current state policy stands. However, if it's a national grid territory or a NYSEG territory or anywhere else, we can go ahead and implement the project. Then The developer will be responsible for owning and operating the system through the term of the contract. He's also responsible for not only getting the anchor subscriber for 40% of the energy, or basically it's the subscription management as a sponsor of the project to go out and enroll for the remainder of the 60% of the energy that's produced from the systems, mass market subscribers. That would be, again, residents and small commercial entities. So whoever's subscribing into the project, they typically receive a discount on their utility bills. They don't have to pay anything out of their pocket. Until recently, there were 2 bills they would receive. So for every unit of energy that's exported under the community solar model to the utility, say, let's say, gives about $1 for every unit of energy. Out of the $1, I get to keep 10 cents of it, and I'll give the 90 cents to the developer. So you could almost look at it as somebody put it very simply, that's actually City of White Plains Public Works Commissioner that said it. And the way he said it is buying a $100 gift card for $90. So you get the $10 discount, and you can use that towards your utility bill credits. But the state has recently moved to something called as Consolidated Billing. So any of the subscribers, including our constituents, do not have to see 2 bills anymore. It's their continuous ongoing, whatever they've been getting from National Grid, let's say in this case, and they'll just start seeing a new line item that shows them bill credits just for subscribing into the project, nothing out of pocket at all. And of course, the same developer will pay the lease payments, and if there are any bill credits, will be passed to from the utility. That's the overall community solar structure. Then the site we looked at, just as a sample to give you some information on this, is the 1201 and 1203 Champlain Street in Augustenburg. And Jason, thank you for providing all of the information if you're on the call. And this is about 18.5 acres site. So I want to walk you through the different images that we have here. The most important things that matter are, how does the topography of the project site look like? Is it flatlands? Are there too many trees that need clearing out? Not that tree clearing cannot be done, but it also comes at a cost. And if you want to consider a replacement, because while we're doing something really good doing solar projects, we also want to be conscious about any impact that there could be, especially if you're talking about local environment. So typically what we ask developers is, if there's any tree removal, it's replaced at least 1:1, or if there are any local guidelines for the carbon footprint, we ask for equivalent 1:1, like carbon footprint replacement. So they have to replant trees elsewhere if they're taking any trees down. And the second one is also, are there any slopes, just the terrain and other things? But along with that, we look at any wetlands or other environmental concerns as well, including endangered species and other things. So there, the top left image was what was shared by the county when we were looking at this particular site. And the bottom left one is something that the New York State DEC, the Department of Environmental Conservation, has published as their maps. As you can see, there is some slight extension of wetlands, or the buffer. The light green you see here is the buffer that NYC DEC maps show. We always want to edge on caution when we approach these models. We tend to be a little conservative, because as long as if the system can be expanded to more than what we are assessing, always well and good. But we just tend to take that conservative approach, at least for the purpose of initial and preliminary assessments. So as you can see, while that entire area was available to us, we only utilized about this area based on also the wetlands that are shown by the DEC maps. The second and the most important thing, also one of the biggest reasons or the factors that has led to several projects not moving forward in New York State, unfortunately, is the utility interconnection. What that means is, does National Grid infrastructure as it exists right now at this site be able to support another solar project and this additional renewable generation? And that's what we look at. The utilities are required to make certain information publicly available with some registration and other things, of course. And we go and review that. If we have any difficulties, if we don't find enough information, we do pick up the phone and speak with the IOUs as well. We've got very good relationships there. But we also have internal technical and interconnection teams that we rely on as well to take a second look at and validate anything that we are verifying. So that's what we've done for this particular project as well. And there seems to be not too far off, like our project site is right here. And the blue line you're seeing here is the national grid, I'll call it the wires that exist there that we can connect to. So I think typically my favorite part of the presentations anytime we do it, Casey did give me a mandate that I should be able to wow you all through our presentation, but this is just very high level, so I may not be able to meet his expectations. At the same time, as you can see, just for that one sample site, we went ahead and did an analysis on how it looks like and see if there's truly economic value at this particular site, right? So one thing that we did not include here, we show if the county were to offtake 40% of the energy produced by the system, how it would look like. And this is that's where you're looking at around $11,000 a year just in bill credits. And this is in addition to the any lease payments that the county may receive just for hosting the project. So the remainder of the credits are to local communities, of course, the constituents, as we discussed. And we're looking at about $450,000 over the 25-year period that your constituents can receive in bill credits alone. About 395 metric tons of carbon dioxide reduced or offset each year. That's of significant value. And based on the national consensus, especially for the region on jobs that solar and energy storage projects typically create, we're talking about a commercial and industrial scale project site, right? Not the residential. So for a CNI project, we're looking at about this project creating about 60 jobs in the region, along with being able to power 71 homes, or its equivalent of taking 86 cars off the road. That's again, each year. The way we present it again the reason why we present it in each year is because while it might look like a very small number, think about it, that's over, if it has to expand over 25 years, the impact is significant. So here, as you can see, obviously the higher benefits are to the constituents or the community. And when it comes to bill credits, but again, when the lease payments are added on top of this, it will be of significant value to the county as well. And we're just looking at one site. If we expand it to a portfolio of multiple properties, of course, it's scaled to be even higher and provides even much higher value than that.
Manila, how many acres does the 2.3 kW represent?
So this portion of the property, while the entire, I think the area that is available is about 18.5, we're probably looking at less than half. We are using some advanced wattage, kind of like more efficient modules here in our modeling too. So that gives us some, like the density that you can get, they call it typically the ground coverage ratio in the industry. Basically means how much ground are you covering, how much energy are you getting, like yield or energy are you getting for each square foot of the system that we're installing. So this probably is around about 3 megawatts, so about maybe 12 acres, I would say, 12 to 12 and a half.
I want to make sure the folks on the call at St. Lawrence County who know from the conversation we had before with their total acreage it is that they're considering, give them some kind of sense of scale. So thank you.
Yep, absolutely. And also we have the ability, the reason what we develop is here again, baseline. When we go to the RFP stage, we will provide baseline designs to the developer. So when we get the responses back or the bids back, we're doing an apples to apples comparison. At the same time, we give them the flexibility.
Fucking crazy.
We give them the flexibility to basically come up with their own designs and be able to propose what they want to propose and expand the system size, because increases system size. Like when we ask for, let's say under community solar, when we ask for them to provide pricing for lease as well, we don't ask them to just give us dollars per acre. Instead, we ask them to provide it in dollars per megawatt per year. That is, so if at all, let's say one developer has really good supplier contracts for getting solar panels, and they're able to get a larger system on the same plot of land when compared to the other one. If they're getting benefits from scale or anything, we want that trickle down back to us as well. So that's where NYPA's approach in requesting pricing to moving forward with the project or evaluation is different from how the rest of the industry looks at it. So there is also that level of transparency we require from the developers to provide to us. Right. The next set of slides I have here are just very quickly, we can go through them. These are mostly case studies, just want to show you some projects that we're doing. I've mentioned about the city of White Plains. Of course, there is also the regional and locational value. For these projects can offer as well. And that's why you see that the 6.8 megawatts pretty much provides, it's actually a 6.85 megawatt portfolio. And you can see this is unique. This is unique in a way because we either think about, when we talk about solar, we're talking about ground mount systems directly built on the ground, or rooftop just lying on the roof where the roof cannot be used for anything else, or parking lots. Here, as you can see on the top picture, these are actually built on parking garages. So because we are talking about a densely urban city like White Plains as well, there's not really a lot of open spaces. And that's where some of the city-owned properties are, these really large, massive parking garages. And IPA was able to provide them services where they could actually build canopies on top of the garages and still be able to make about $1 million a year in just in lease revenues annually. And that is in addition to that, or on top of that, they were able to receive about a little over $100,000 in bill credits. The incentives are one of the major things that played into giving them that kind of benefits. And that incentive market has tapered down significantly now in the state, not saying like not economical anymore at all, but may not be as attractive as what we're looking at here. And also the region and where the cost of electricity in the Southeast New York region obviously is significantly higher than the rest of the state. So that kind of added value to the project as well. A couple of other examples, we are building a portfolio of similar community solar projects that are about 13.5 megawatts of solar PV paired with energy storage at the JFK International Airport. That will be similar to what we're doing for Westchester County, where a portion of it is consumed on site at the airport. The remainder will be offered to the local community constituents and constituents, basically. The last one is, as we were working with Westchester County, we had a lot of municipalities that had reached out to us within the county that were interested in a similar model. Some of their sites were smaller where they may not be as attractive to the developers if they stood by themselves. And that's where we thought again out of the box and worked with the county, partnered with the county actually, to come up with what we call a community solar partnership program. Under this program, basically, public entities within Westchester County have the ability to enroll into the program, where they can either develop on their own properties or just offtake from projects that exist within the region that are within the portfolio again, or do a combination of both. So we have about, actually not counting the county, Westchester County themselves, we have about 26 municipalities that have enrolled and over actually 9 school districts right now that are participating from the get-go of the program. This meant actually, it was a heavy lift because there are dozens and dozens of sites that are submitted by all of these customers, and we went through all of them, thoroughly vetted. We are in the process of making an award. We issued the RFP as a public solicitation. We have gotten some really, really good responses that are, in a way, we were thrilled and surprised, and it's a pleasant surprise though. And we're in the process of making our final selection of the developers. So that's where this particular project stands. It's expected to generate anywhere between 25 is the lowest. Again, that's being very conservative. Opportunity to expand on that is also significantly high here. And of course, it has potential to incorporate battery energy storage systems, which will provide additional value, both in terms of lease payments and also in terms of bill credits. So I believe that's the last of my slides, and I'll stop sharing now and open it to you if you have any questions.
Yeah, I think we do. Legislator Reagan.
My question's been answered.
Okay. Legislator Haggard.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Could you please share that deck with possibly our county administrator? I'd like to go over the slides again. There was a lot of information you presented, and if you could send it to her, if you wouldn't mind, she could send it to the people that requested.
Absolutely, no problem at all. Casey will be able to share that with the county.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Well, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for your time. We'll look into that information when you send it to us, probably much closer. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, thank you. We would obviously make ourselves available for any and all subsequent questions, comments, or opportunity to talk further about development of this project.
Great.
Yep,
Thanks
it's
again.
an absolute pleasure. Thank you too. Have a great evening. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
So next up is St. Lawrence Arts Council. We have Maggie McKenna, the Executive Director.
Thank you, everyone, for having me. I am Maggie McKenna. St. Lawrence, actually, our official title is St. Lawrence County Arts Council, though we are not, as you all know, affiliated with county government. But we are the arts agency within St. Lawrence County, and we actually distribute re-grant funds from the New York State Council on the Arts in upwards of $60,000 to St. Lawrence, Jefferson, and Lewis counties. We are the only arts agency in those three counties that receives that grant from NYSCA, and so we're kind of the mini NYSCA, New York State Council on the Arts, for the mini NYSCA of our region. I'm also going to share my screen, and I wanted to talk to you about our North Country Arts Festival that's starting up at the end of next week, and then also talk to you about our arts center that we're working on. Can you all see my screen at this point?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so this is actually our printed program, and I will send this over to you next week when we get it back from the printers. But I'm going to run through it with you so you can see what we're working on. But this North Country Arts Festival, alongside the new Creative Spirit Community Arts Center that we're building, they're really the two pillars of our strategic plan, so that we have both a hub for our organization and for the arts industry in our region as a whole, and a festival celebrating the arts across our entire county, and hopefully expanding that even further than just St. Lawrence County. We would love to really to bring the whole arts region or the arts industry together as a regional tourism destination. So this is the North Country Arts Festival, and it starts next weekend actually with Potsdam Porch Fest and Canton Porch Fest. So I'll run through and show you all the different things that are going on throughout the month of September, and we'll go from there. So also, I want to actually, before I go there, the St. Lawrence County Arts Council, our mission is we enrich the vibrancy of the North Country community by cultivating art appreciation and inspiring creative expression. Let me go back to this. Let's see if I can make this work. There we go. Okay, so this festival is really a series of different events that are all marketed together under one umbrella, that is the North Country Arts Festival, in an effort to expand our marketing reach to both all of the communities throughout St. Lawrence County, and then also to tourists just outside the community that will come up for events and participate in the arts industry that we have, the very vibrant arts industry that we have up here. So the Creative Partner Showcase is an exhibit of all of our artists' work. We have about 30 artists participating in that one exhibit, and I don't have the exact numbers right this second, but we have over 100 different artists between musicians and creative and visual artists participating in this festival as a whole. So we have a few different other exhibits, including our Big and Small themed exhibit that's in the Potsdam Town Hall, and the plein air group exhibit that will be at the Traditional Arts of Upstate New York Tawny in Canton. And plein air is just painting outside. There's an incredible number of people in our region that do that and do incredibly well selling their artwork when they just create it on site. So the big starting event is on September 4th, and it actually includes 3 different components. So the first is that we have the SLC Arts Market, and that is a sales event for artists. We have the list of participating artists right here, and they will be selling in Ives Park in Potsdam. All of them actually have to have their own sales tax ID number, and they will be selling their work on that day. The other component within Ives Park as well is a whole festival of concerts. The Ives Park concert series started in 2016, and we're kind of just repositioning it. So we have 4 different performances, and it actually ends with a really wonderful, originally Potsdam native, Sinclair, who's now down in Nashville, and she's internationally known. So that is the 4th, and then the last component on the 4th is our Porch Fest, which was a really fun COVID safe event that we've ran for the first time last year, and it is on residential porches within the village of Potsdam, so people can walk from Ives Park down to the neighborhood and see everything that's going on throughout the day. The next day, though, on September 5th, we'll have, this is the first time we're running this, and it's the Canton Porch Fest, and so we'll have 8 different performances on 4 porches in downtown Canton as well. And that'll be a really fun event, pretty low key, and I hope that people will come and see all the wonderful musicians that'll be performing then. We also have another Ives Park concert series concert, the Crane Latin Ensemble, on the 18th. So another piece of this, the festival as a whole, was that we're really trying to develop our partners across the county as much as possible. And we work with the Remington Art Museum in Ogdensburg, with Tawny in Canton, with Messina Artists Association, and all sorts of other agencies to promote the arts together and really work as a county-wide team. So we do have some partner events that we have in here, including Fort Representation, that's doing a plein air event on site there. Music on Main is an event in Canton that's happening every Thursday from 5 to 6. And then Tawny has a few different exhibits, and the Harvest Moon, that's happening at that's the fall fundraiser dinner at the Remington. So we wanted to make sure that those got promoted as well. And there's more partner information later on too. Okay, so this is kind of the centerpiece of our whole festival, and the studio tour, the artist studio tour, has been running for 34 years. So you might remember going into an artist's home like 30 years ago, and that was what you were doing. You were on the SLC Arts studio tour at that time. But what we're doing this year is we're actually separating it out into 3 different regions. So I'll show you the 3 really quick. We have the Southeast, that's kind of Colton, Parishville, Hanover Falls, then the Northwest, which is Ogdensburg, all the way down to the Ivy Smith and Hammond, and some other places in Rensselaer Falls and Canton. And then the last weekend is Potsdam, Madrid, up to Waddington. We didn't have anybody in Messina sign up this year, unfortunately. But we wanted to give people an opportunity to see the different artists, and when we had it all, the whole entire county all combined in one weekend, most people could only go to 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 maybe sites. My first year working at the Arts Council, I went to 18 sites in 2 days, and it was bonkers. So not recommended for anyone. So we're separating it out this year so that you can go all the way across the county over 3 weekends and really visit with these artists, see their work, buy their work, and get to know the county as a whole and the amazing talent that exists here. We as an organization will also have a hub set up in different parts of the county for each weekend as well. So the first weekend, we're going to be down in Colton at 5 Ellen's Living. The second weekend will be at the Remington, and then at Tawny the next day. Then the last weekend, we're going to be at the Power and Equipment Museum with the County Chamber's open air market that's happening on the 25th. And then the last day will be in our new arts center. The Remington Arts Festival really closes out the festival, and that's a really awesome sales event again for our artists. And it's celebrating the Frederick Remington, who was born in Canton, and letting Canton kind of hold on to that ownership of Remington just a little bit, because I know that there's a little bit of Ogdensburg Canton vibes going on through about Remington, but we want to kind of mesh that together, and that's actually the same day as the gala event at the Remington Art Museum. So it'll be a really fun Remington day to celebrate his birthday. As I mentioned before, this is another part of our program, and it's our re-grant program. Again, that's that $60,000 that we distribute to organizations and artists, and some of it also goes to public school programs, like helping them with their theater programs. So it's a really amazing program that we have been doing since 2008. And we're just growing that re-grant program more and more and more every year. And we also have a celebration, a award ceremony for our grantees on the 29th. So this is the other part about our partners that I want to mention. We do keep an inventory of arts resources that exist throughout our region. And this is really the first time we're publishing what we have. So it's just great to see across, especially St. Lawrence, Jefferson, and Lewis counties, how many world-class art resources there are. So many really wonderful things to go see. And really, we don't fill in the Adirondack Park as much because that's not really our region. There's another agency that kind of focuses on that. We're really focused on St. Lawrence County, Jefferson, and Lewis for the re-grant program. And then, And then again, we highlighted some of our major partners throughout the county who provide really amazing arts and culture resources for the people who live here and tourists as well. So before I continue, actually, does anybody have any questions on the Arts Festival?
Not seeing any. Continue, Maggie.
Okay, I will just finish up real quick with, again, I said the 2 pillars of our strategic plan include the festival and then our Creative Spirit Community Arts Center, which is in downtown Potsdam. We did receive $578,000 from Potsdam's Downtown Revitalization Initiative grant to renovate that building, and we're purchasing that building. The full project is about $800,000. We have a campaign to raise about $200,000. And this is creating a hub for the arts industry as a whole in our region. And reusing a building that has been underutilized or mostly vacant for a very long time, and one that has also held an exhibit hall for many years as well. So there's a lot of history that goes back into that as well. So it's once we're renovated and we are holding this festival, these 2 components are going to work really beautifully together to support the artists in our community, to support anybody who's interested in music, art, theater, comedy, any kind of drama, any kind of painting or learning. We're developing partnerships with the colleges and with the public schools, with all sorts of arts agencies across our county as well, and looking to show more people what we're up to, really. And that's why I'm here. And sorry, I just want to make sure that I didn't leave anything out. That's pretty much all I have on this. Does anybody have any questions specifically about the center or the festival?
You know, we like to ask our legislator from Messina why there's no talent in Messina.
Yeah.
Speak to that, Ms. Terminelli. What happened there?
There is a lot of talent, but I think a lot of people don't have their own studios to share.
Mrs. Haggard has a question. Legislator Haggard, please.
Thank you, Mrs. McKenna. I noticed the town of Potsdam recently designated the St. Lawrence Arts Council as their local arts agency. Can you tell me how that benefits you, or if that would be something that we as a county could do?
Absolutely. As a county-wide, region-wide agency, we are always looking to support the region as a whole, especially through our re-grant re-grant opportunities. So we actually applied for the first time ever to the National Endowment for the Arts this year to receive what they call sub-granting dollars, but it's the same as our re-grant dollars, sub-granting dollars to distribute to agencies in our region. In order to do that, we did need to be designated as a local arts agency. With that, I would love to discuss becoming a local arts agency for the county, and it wouldn't cost the county anything. It would just say we are the agency you would go to to ask for those kinds of re-grant funds or to create projects like that. We're also, another part of our strategic plan, our longer term strategic plan, is to do cultural planning. So, and to encourage creative placemaking, which is, I'm not going to get into all that because there's like many scholarly papers on that are complicated. But I have talked to Jason Fodenhauer about that, just putting a bug in his ear at the county. But it would just be strengthening the partnership and really recognizing that the arts are a crucial component to our region's economy and to our community vitality. So if that was something that the county would be interested in, I would definitely like to speak to that more. But really with the town, and if we were to expand to the county, it would be a designation as a local arts agency so that we can get that federal funding.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Anyone else? Well, thank you, Ms. McKenna, for your presentation. I love what you've got going on in September, showing all the activities. For people that live here in the North Country, they think that nothing is going on. They need to get involved because we really have some world-class talent, musicians and singers and art. And just the local talent artisans is something to explore for everyone. So it's by doing what you're doing, that's helping and getting out there so people get a wider array of what's happening in their community.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I am hoping to speak to you more about the effects that the arts have on tourism within our community, as well as economic development.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you once again. We'll move right on. Appreciate your time. Okay, first up, we have Legislator Margaret Haggard. Margaret, would you like to read your resolution, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I offer a resolution proclaiming September 12th through the 18th, 2021 as National Arts and Education Week in St. Lawrence County and move for its adoption.
Would someone like to second that? Second by Mr. Terminelli and Mr. Smithers. Discussion on the amendment. Ms. Haggard.
Well, I think it.
Resolution, I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you. I think based on what, certainly what Ms. McKenna presented to us this evening and the importance of this in education, I think that we need to take the extra step of proclaiming a special week so that it is in forefront in everyone's mind about how this contributes to our community, not just our STEAM community, but to the entire community. I think that, as you said, Mr. Chairman, we have so much going on in our county, and it'd be great to be able to make it more visible and attract people here. There's a lot of stuff. We have our great outdoor resources, but we have a lot of indoor resources too. So thank you very much.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, 2 Sundays ago, there was a presentation over by Crane, community performance series, and it was all by local music teachers from Indian River, Messina. What's Jerry's last name? Jerry Manner's daughter is an incredible talent. And it was just a wonderful experience singing all afternoon Broadway tunes, as good as you can see on Broadway. And these are all local people that are educating our kids. So I want to thank you for that, for raising this resolution. Any further discussion on this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next up, we have solid waste with Mr. Don Chambers. The resolution is modifying the 2021 budget for the solid waste department overtime expenses. Moved by Mr. Smithers, second by Mr. Perkins. Mr. Chambers.
Yes, thank you. The resolution that you have for consideration this evening takes funds from the contingency fund within the operating budget of solid waste and puts the funds in the line for overtime expenses. That will bring our total overtime expenses allowable to approximately $134,000, and leaves around $117,000 left in our contingency account within the operating budget.
Any questions for Mr. Chambers? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank
Next
you.
up for highway, also with Mr. Chambers, the first resolution is modifying the 2021 budget for department. I'm sorry, what's that?
I just had a quick question on solid waste.
Certainly.
Mr.
Chambers?
John, you got a second? A few years back, several years back, when fuel was escalating in cost, I believe we implemented a fuel surcharge. And I think we're nearing, I see the average gallon of gas is $3.16 national today. I don't remember what we were at before, but I'm thinking it's pretty close. Has there been any consideration yet of that, or thoughts, or?
I believe I will need to have some further discussions with the Solid Waste Committee on some other changes that will be possibly coming in the 22 budget, but our fees may have to be looked at due to some outside forces.
Okay, yeah.
Absolutely.
I remember it was quite a while. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Forsythe. Our next resolution is for highway, and it's modifying the 2021 budget for the Department of Highways for overtime and machinery rental. Moved by Mr. Perkins, seconded by Mr. Forsythe. Mr. James and Mr. Curran, second also.
Yes.
Mr. James.
Yes, thank you. A couple topics being covered here. I'll take it with the overtime, taking funds out of the existing highway budget, out of the area where we pay motor equipment operators and heavy equipment operators. We've had some vacancies that will be able to fund the overtime expenses, hopefully till the end of the year. And the other two items that are related, one that goes into the HB1 machinery rental, that's for bridge machinery rental, and H1 machinery rental, that's for road work. Due to the increase in work that we have with the increase in CHIPS funding being almost 1.6 million, and then rolling over from the previous year due to the holdback of the state of over $250,000, has facilitated more work to be done by our forces. The balancing, and again, this is being balanced within the budget, basically putting the expenditures where they need to be for this year. We did have a rather light year for snow and ice removal. So that's where you'll see in the decreases, the HCR machinery rental, that's for county snow removal, and the H snow machinery rental, which is on state roads for machinery rental. That's the internal machinery rental is the internal charges that we charge from one account to basically to fund the shop from highway operations. So basically internal accounting, but staying within the existing highway budget.
Okay. Any more questions for Mr. Chambers? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
Next resolution is approving federal aid local project supplemental agreement number 1 for right-of-way incidentals and acquisition for County Route 35, known as Slab City, over Trout Brook Bridge Project. Bid number 775394, bid number 3341700. Moved by Ms. Burkett, second by Mr. Smithers. Mr. Chambers.
Yes, thank you. This project, we've had a number of resolutions moving forward for various contracts with the state for funding. This one happens to deal with the acquisition of right-of-way. This project is on County Road 35 at the intersection with the Potsdam-Morley Road. This project will be replacing a bridge, but also doing safety improvements for the intersections of Potsdam-Morley Road, and actually relocating the two legs of Potsdam-Morley Road as they approach County Road 35, increasing sight distance and meeting modern standards for safe intersection safety. So this will approve the contract with the state of New York, who is procuring the right-of-way for the county.
Okay, any questions, Mr. Chambers? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next, we have a 2021 project update. Mr. Chambers.
Yes, I'll try to be brief. We do have a lot going on. I'll start out with the bridges. The department currently has 8 bridges currently in construction out of the 10 planned for this year. County Road 54 on the in the town of Stockholm near the Lawrencetown line is planned to be closed September 9th. So that'll be the 9th bridge under construction. And County Road 27, town of Russell, near Tooley Pond, will be closed somewhere in that time frame as well. The other projects, bridge projects that we have, Jones Road bridges, which there's actually 2 bridges at that location. We're working on there's work going on the foundation and the steel. Foundation work is a little over 50% complete. Browns Bridge in the Hanwha area in Pierpont, this structural, all the substructure work is done. The new steel is in place and deck forming is underway. Island Branch Road in the town of Fowler is working on deck forming as well. Northumberland in the town of Morristown is a bridge removal, and the water and sewer installation is underway, which is required prior to the removal of the structure. Halfway House Road in a bridge in the town of Waddington, structure and deck installation is planned for this week. Darren Road in the town of Lawrence, superstructure and deck installation within 2 weeks. Depot Street in town of Brazier, hamlet of Helena, will have the steel set tentatively this Wednesday. On our roadway projects, within approximately 2 weeks, all the road projects that we'll have will be recycled, and we are starting on the paving schedule. The final paving at this point is already underway and should be complete by the second week in October. As far as the outposts, the Russell and Lisbon new outposts are coming along with the concrete foundations and concrete walls being installed at this time.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Chambers? Anything happening at the new purchase on the Potsdam site on Route 11, Mr. Chambers?
Actually, I had a meeting with New York State DOT to give me the preliminary, they gave me preliminary approval of the location today. We will need to then take that to the surveyors to do a deed description to move that project forward.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Chambers.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is our county attorney, Stephen Button. And the first resolution is authorizing the settlement agreement between Johnson & Johnson and St. Lawrence County with respect to an action related to the opioid crisis. Moved by Mr. Forsythe, second by Mr. Lightfoot. And reoccurring. Mr. Button.
Good evening, everybody. I think everyone is aware that the county has been engaged as a litigant associated with the opioid epidemic, specifically dealing with the recoveries that are going on with respect to the distributors and manufacturers of OxyContin and fentanyl. We have had actions going on with respect to Purdue Pharma. We've had actions going on with respect to Johnson & Johnson, Abbott Laboratories, and a number of other distributors and manufacturers of opioids. I know everyone is familiar with the fact that we reached an agreement that is moving to the bankruptcy courts associated with the Purdue Pharma. They were one of the main distributors and manufacturers of fentanyl and OxyContin. The resolution you have in front of you would authorize a settlement with Johnson & Johnson. About a month and a half ago, Johnson & Johnson started their test case down on Long Island, and that test case ultimately resulted in a settlement. From that, there was a framework that was developed that would identify what the other plaintiffs would be eligible to receive. Within the body of this resolution, you'll see that there is a range that St. Lawrence County can recover as a result of the settlement. It is contingent on the other counties that are named litigants signing in. The more counties that sign in, the more money we will actually get on this settlement. The range, as you'll note, indicates that it's somewhere between 717,000 or approximately 717,000 and 307,000. It's looking like it's probably going to be closer to the 700,000 range rather than the $300,000 range. Because from what I have been informed, the counties are in fact signing on to this agreement. All of the counties that are signing on to this agreement have to pass a resolution authorizing the agreement prior to September 10th. So this resolution would effectively authorize me to communicate our acceptance of that settlement.
Any questions for Mr. Button? Mr. Forsythe.
Steve, you said before September 10th, so our full board meeting's not till the 13th?
That's correct. What I'm hoping is that this board will authorize me nunc-pro-tunc or retroactively at the September 10th board meeting to authorize effective this date. Just a couple of other side notes that I think everyone should be aware of associated with the settlement. The vast majority of this settlement will be what are designated as restricted funds. Restricted is defined as those funds to be utilized for purposes related to the opioid epidemic, whether they be in the form of treatment, or they be in the form of law enforcement, or activities that are related specifically to opioid recovery. There's approximately 154,000 that would come up front that would be unrestricted. The county could utilize it for any purpose. But I think, as Mr. Forsythe pointed out, I would be seeking to have this resolution retroactive to this date.
Okay. Anyone else? I will be voting against this, as I have in the 2-3 years that we've been doing this. This is a legal drug that billions were spent by pharmaceutical companies to bring onto the market. It's been highly regulated, and it's prescribed by doctors. And doctors are not being held accountable for any malfeasance of overprescribing or doing multiple prescriptions for certain individuals. The end result will be increased costs to us, patients, consumers of actual products, and it will stem bringing other products to the market. So I'll be voting no to be consistent with it been for the last 2 or 3 years. So, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed is 1 no. Thank you. Next resolution is adopting the legal arguments of the amicus brief submitted by the state of Arizona on behalf of 25 similarly situated states in the matter of New York State Rifle and Pistol Association Incorporated. That's Al B. Kevin B. P. Bruin in his official capacity as superintendent of the New York State Police et al., currently pending before the United States Supreme Court. Moved by Mr. Lightfoot, second by Mr. Forsythe, Mr. Denisha, and Ms. Curran. Mr. Button.
Thank you. I know this board is very familiar with the activities of the past 6 years related to concerns that arose with respect to the term proper cause that's contained in Penal Law Section 400. In Penal Law Section 400, the issuance of a pistol license is conditioned on a licensing authority or licensing officer determining that the applicant has what is known as proper cause. A demonstration that the individual is specially suited to possess a firearm and capable of possessing a firearm. This term has permitted a really wide array of responses from licensing authorities in all of the 57 counties outside of New York City, and then a special arrangement essentially in New York City that encompasses the 5 boroughs, really compiling the full 62 counties having a patchwork quilt of solutions related to the issuance of pistol licenses. Back in 2015, this board moved to actually define the term proper cause because the courts had identified that proper cause had never really truthfully been defined. And this board identified proper cause as being essentially any legal or legitimate purpose to allow for the issuance of these licenses. When there were difficulties moving forward from that, this board took various actions in the forms of resolutions, calling upon changes in state law, calling upon changes in the legislation that govern the issuance of pistol licenses. This continued until approximately 2019, when this board joined with the state of Louisiana and 16 other states as amicus in the matter of NYSERPA versus New York City. That was the first real significant challenge to the pistol licensing statutes since 2010. First major challenge to individual rights and seeking to at least identify the scope of the Second Amendment for utilization. After the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus New York City case that was ultimately mooted by a change in state law to permit for transport of weapons to and from a person's primary residence to a secondary residence, there were a number of cases that popped up at the Supreme Court. The first 9 were almost out of hat, shrugged off. They were dismissed by the Supreme Court as not moving forward. This case in particular recently popped up. When I say recently, it popped up in March. This case is NYSERPA versus Kevin Bruin. It was previously Corlett, the name of the New York State police superintendent. The allegation that has been brought forward is that New York State's pistol licensing statute, and more specifically its gun laws, impede the utilization of the Second Amendment, that the Second Amendment should proceed from a shall issue rather than a may issue. And so let me explain that a little bit so you understand the distinction. The presumption that many states take, the 26 that you're seeing in these resolutions, is that a state must demonstrate why an applicant should not have a pistol license rather than force the applicant to demonstrate why they should be granted a pistol license or a gun license. And the may issue states like New York and California continue to work from that operative provision, these proper cause or reasonable cause requirements within the statute. The shall issue states work from the belief that everyone should be entitled until the state demonstrates their own proper reasoning as to why no license should be issued. The argument before the United States Supreme Court is that all states should be operating on a shall issue basis rather than a may issue basis to force the state to demonstrate why an individual should not be in possession of a firearm rather than force all individuals to demonstrate why they should be entitled to one. The argument is really the first major Second Amendment case that appears to be headed towards full argument and full decision since the Heller case, DC versus Heller, that came down in 2009, and in 2010, Chicago versus McDonald. Both of those indicated that the Second Amendment is an individual right and also applicable to states and local governments. So by adopting this resolution, the board would be adopting the arguments of the state of Arizona. The state of Arizona filed its amicus brief on July 21st. This will be going to oral argument before the United States Supreme Court on November 7th.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bott. Any questions for our county attorney on this matter? See none, all those in favor of the resolution?
Kevin.
Sorry, Ms. Perkins.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Steve for his diligence with this, bringing it forward, and I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor, please.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Okay. As Mr. Denisha also. Ms. Curran has her hand up. Do you have a question or go ahead?
Co-sponsor, please.
Yeah. Mr. Lightfoot also? Okay. Mr. Reagan? Okay. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
One no. Ms. Taggart. All right, next up is the resolution concerning information technology. We have Rick Johnson with us. The resolution is authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Usherwood Office Technology to provide a multi-function device lease and management program for St. Lawrence County. Moved by Mr. Denisha, seconded by Ms. Curran. Mr. Johnson.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for letting me attend yet another legislator meeting. Our consideration this evening, I appreciate the opportunity to bring it forward, is what used to be known as the every 4-year copier contract. Has now evolved into a multi-function device that is regularly used and depended on as a piece of our technical infrastructure throughout the county. 5 years ago, we forged a relationship with Usherwood Office Technology. Our hope was to, as opposed to just bid this out like widgets to be replaced every so often, every 4 years, we were hopeful to develop a relationship that could evolve, because these things do so much more. And Usherwood really has risen to the occasion and done very well by us. Having said all that, now that, because of extenuating circumstances a year ago, we are here now 5 years after the forging of that contract. And they've come forward with a very aggressive offer, which for all intents and purposes replaces with new machines that we just used to replace them all. And that's, of course, at a higher cost. Because these units are higher quality and we're continuing the relationship with the vendor, we have new opportunities available to us. In this case, for the first time ever, we'll be actually keeping a third of the fleet in place and replacing 2/3 of the fleet, with the promise that if any of the ones not being replaced fail, they'll be replaced at no additional charge. That's going to bring our costs down to approximately $24,000 a year from what we're paying now, and getting 2/3 of the units replaced. And they're also adding a net 3 additional machines. Really great contract. Very excited to be presenting it.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Johnson? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a resolution from Legislator Tony Arquette. Mr. Arquette, if you would.
I offer a resolution for the dedication of a plaque on the Jones Road Bridge in the town of Hopkins and Blue Bridge. That's an option.
Okay, second by Mr. Forsyth. Discussion. Mr. Arquette.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I had the good fortune of being friends with a gentleman named Dennis Banan, who lost his leg a couple of years ago, and the snowmobile accident just up from the Jones Road Bridge. His legs was taken far before his time. He was a really good family man, a good friend to many. If you don't recognize the name, you might have known him. He worked for Frenchie Chevrolet in the service department his entire adulthood, and actually ran the service department for the bulk of those years. I won't get too long-winded into this because he's got a contingency that's going to come in on the 13th for the full board meeting. Just a little bit about him. He was a very avid hunter, fisherman, outdoorsman, to the degree that he was the president of the Flower Hill Hunting Club, Sportsman Club up in that area. Spent just decades with his friends, close circle of friends that continue to suffer regularly over his loss. So I appreciate the support on this resolution.
So any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next up, we have Legislator Bill Sheridan. Bill, Mr. Sheridan, would you like to read the resolution, please?
Can we read
Well, I'll do the first one.
What's that?
Oh, I got it. Okay, I'll do the first one. So the first resolution is setting a date for a public hearing on proposed local law C, number yet to be determined for the year 2021, for setting the salary for the county attorney. Moved by Mr. Forsyth, second by Mr. Lightfoot, and Mr. Denisha, and Ms. Curran. Discussion. Bill,
It's simply setting the date for the public hearing. The number that has been suggested and one that I proposed was the salary of $158,000, which was derived as an average salary with the other counties that share, where the county attorney is also involved with the social services and the county attorney's office. And those counties are, the first one being Erie, which was $172,000. And then the other one was Orange County, $169,000 is what they're paying those attorneys that both, that wear both hats. Dutchess County, $168,000. And then Schenectady County was $150,000. And Ontario, $133,000. So the average of those was $158,000, and I thought that would be a fair number that we would agree upon, and would be fair to the taxpayers considering the workload that Mr. Button has taken on with these new duties.
thank you, Mr. Sheridan. Anyone else? Seeing none, Mr. Lightfoot.
Just to add that I think it is a lot more than just a workload. In my mind, it's the level of understanding, it's the level of the county attorney's knowledge of the laws, and his ability to give this board the best possible legal advice that we could hope to obtain. I think that it is a low figure. I think if you take a look at what the other attorneys in the county are charging, $200 an hour plus, do the math and figure out what he could be earning in private practice. And this is one guy that I don't want to see in private practice. I want to see him representing St. Lawrence County.
Okay, Mr. Arquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo those sentiments. I think that all of us have certain levels of expertise and intelligence in certain areas, a little bit less than others. As far as county government is concerned, I have yet to find where Mr. Button is not an expert in all areas. So I'm happy to support this.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing no more discussion, all those in favor of the resolution? Ms. Curran.
Sorry about that. I agree with Mr. Lightfoot and Mr. Arquette. I think in many of those counties, the county attorney that we're talking about their salary, the only thing they do is keep track of the other county attorneys, where our county attorney does it all. But I agree with the idea of giving him a raise. I just think it more.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now, Mr. Sheridan, will you read the resolution?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a resolution supporting milfoil reduction efforts on Sylvia Lake in the town of Fowler, modifying the 2021 budget for Sandwich County, and I move for its adoption.
Seconded by Mr. Lightfoot. Discussion, and Ms. Curran also. Go ahead.
I was notified that we had our board meeting, Governor Fair, by the mayor of Governor about this issue concerning the lake and the milfoil problem in that particular lake. It's a beautiful lake. And town supervisor Fowler, Rick Newvine, has also been in contact with me with his concerns and asked for the county to possibly do something that would help their situation. I've been in contact with a lady who's in charge of the milfoil management fund up there, and she's been involved with this fight with milfoil for like 20 years, she tells me, and she knows an awful lot about the issue. And I learned a lot about the issue as a result of talking to her. And she has been working at raising money and raising funds for a while. And like, for example, I think it was last year they spent $8,000. They raised $8,000, and then it was matched for $16,000 for 2 weeks. That was the year before, and then last year they did the same thing. So they have been putting some effort in it, raising funds, fighting this by themselves, and they've asked for us to help out. Now, they work with one of two companies that do fight this milfoil in this state. And it's owned by a gentleman by the name of Dominic Jude and his wife. They own one of the two companies. And they're dealing with, this company has it's a scholarship internship program set up for college students who want to learn how to dive. And so they hire these students to do the work for 2 weeks on that particular lake every year. And they're going to do it again next year, probably. And these students get money for actually pulling the plants from the bottom of that lake. And rather than other ways of harvesting and so forth, which is controversial, and some say it spreads the milfoil rather than actually takes care of it. And the issue there on that lake, it's like 540 acre lake, is milfoil is around the edge of that lake. It's not like it is in Black Lake. It's on just the edges. So they have a little bit more optimistic view of beating this milfoil problem there, because it is on the shorelines. And it's in the shallow water, but the lake is actually deep. So it's okay down in the deeper areas, but it's along the shoreline that they're concerned about, one end in particular. And so their idea is, or this company's idea is, to pull those milfoil plants early on in their life, the plant's life. And then it won't grow. It takes 2.5 years to grow one of those plants so it actually reaches the surface of the water. So if they get it early, they tell me, and what they've learned is that plant, once it goes out and flowers onto the water, that's when the seeds start producing and making more milfoil. So they get it before in its early stages, and because they've been doing this for a while, they've got they've started a pretty good battle on it. And these kids who they have like 4 per pontoon boat that work on this project will collect up to thousands of pounds of milfoil in just a day. And they put them in these like huge bags and they take them over the boat ramp and trucks come in and other farmers want that stuff that they pulled out, the milfoil for chicken feed, fill, as long as it's not near a body of water, and other, they use it for other things as well. So it works out that way quite well for them. They've really been giving an effort to fight it out there. So they're asking for some help. And so I explained to them that it might not be something that is going to be on a yearly thing for us. I explained that there's some of us on this board feeling that it should be up to the state of New York and the DEC and the federal government to be taking care of our lakes and our streams in the state of New York, and not county governments. So they understand that, but they would like a helping hand. And the figure we came up with is like half of what we talked about for in that last resolution Mr. Lightfoot presented and that I supported. And but that's a bigger lake. It's like 27 miles long, I think, if I'm right. And this is only 504 acre lake. It's not as big a lake, and it doesn't, as they say, got the deep water in the center of it, so it doesn't have the issues. So we come up with a $15,000 figure, and that would help them go a long way for next year. So I ask for your support on it.
Any discussion or questions? Mrs. Haggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd be inclined to support this, but I'm having a hard time understanding where exactly the $15,000 goes. Does it go to pulling the weeds? Or, I don't mean to call something a weed, it's not a weed, but it sounds like a weed, okay?
Yeah.
Pulling the weeds or studying it, or how specifically do they spend that money?
It's actually just, it's used to pay the people who are working for the company, who are on that pontoon, who I think spend like 8 hours underwater per day and another 3 hours on the top of the water, taking the stuff that's been chopped up by the props where the heavy fishing area is, because they've got to try to get stuff that the props have chopped up. And that's what it is that makes milfoil grow. So they clean that up for another 3 hours. So from what I understand, it's like a 12-hour day, and it goes on for 2-week period. Go ahead.
Mr. Forsythe.
Yeah, do we have a percentage of how much of the milfoil they do in that 2-week stint, 3-week stint? Percentage of the lake that's covered?
I don't have a percentage on that, and it was not offered to me on a percentage. I just
wonder if they're hitting 5% of the lake milfoil, or they're hitting 50% of the lake milfoil.
They didn't tell me a percentage other than they're saying they're pulling up 30 to 35 big, huge net bags of this milfoil plant on a daily basis. It's over 1,000 pounds of plants that they're pulling up that are big. Remember, the plants that are not, they're still young, and that's where they think they can get ahead of the game by getting the stuff that's young and keeping up with it.
The reason I asked is I missed the governor fair when I wanted to talk on this at the governor fair one especially. I was there when Senator Schumer came to Black Lake several years ago, and he was at the Flanders residence, I believe one of them, the doctors, and said he was going to get it cleared up and take care of it. And I don't think he's been back to Black Lake since then, and I know the milfoil's gotten no less in the meantime. To me, it's a Band-Aid fix, same as just about every effort has been a Band-Aid fix. It came to me the other day, Mr. Campo came in regarding the water chestnut. That's going to be the next one. I drive over Kerbals Creek Lakewood Creek that I grew up walking along as a kid. There's a red substance on top of it that I've never seen before. I'm sure that's invasive to some extent. Where do we stop? Where do we start? Where do we stop? And what effect is it truly having? I know there's an effort with the 28,000. Now I've heard that they're not even going to utilize it this year to do all that channel. They're going to use a portion of it and save it for next year. So do we just write blank checks to all these places with invasive species? I don't know. Margaret asked a good question. Who gets the money? So are we just going to write a check for 15,000 to Sylvian Lake Association? I don't know. Once you do one, you're going to do them all, and you're going to find out how many invasive species there are in the lakes in St. Lawrence County. And at one time, I was told there's 46 bodies of water in St. Lawrence County. I don't know if that's true or not, but there may be. So get ready. I'm going to vote no, same as I would have against Governor for Black Lake, and I support Black Lake. I've supported it as a business owner for years with their tan fish derby. We sponsor a fish every year. So, you know, I feel that, but we're not the body that should be doing this. If this was to retain, to help them retain someone, to be a bigger benefactor, a matching fund type thing, which it sounds a little bit like in the resolution, I may support it a little bit, but to just go pull a few weeds, which I'm guessing is probably 2 to 3% of the lake, I think it's just futile. I'll oppose it.
Good. Mr. Light.
That's the first I've heard that they're not going to use all the money at Black Lake, and I will certainly look into it. But I think that legislative foresight is on something. It needs to be an effort, not piecemeal. Black Lake this year, Sylvia Lake next year, Norwood Lake the year after. With that in mind, I reached out to the DEC. I reached out to Clarkson University. I reached out to the Chambers of Commerce on Black Lake, the towns that surround Black Lake. I have it in my calendar to reach out to the superintendent of the town of Minerva in Essex County. The reason for that is because that is, I think I mentioned that there's one of the lakes in the Adirondacks that is being treated chemically by an applicator licensed by the DEC to do such a thing. I don't know the name of the chemical that they're treating with, but what I am told is that they have had a great deal of success with it. It doesn't eradicate it. It holds it in check more than anything else. Eliminates it for a period of 1 or 2 years, I'm told, and it will come back if something is not done to continue treating it. I've also asked, and I've been in consultation with the board chair, I've also asked the planning department and the Environmental Management Council to take the lead in spearheading an effort, a countywide effort, to look for grants. And Dr. Twist at Clarkson University, the head of the biology department, is the gentleman that conducted the last survey on Norwood Lake. That report will be issued here within the next couple of months. He is also familiar with the grant process and applied for and received a grant to study the issue on Norwood Lake. He's interested in participating in this. So I think the more that we have, the wider net we cast to get interested people in the county on board with this. And I think getting the EMC and planning on board with it and agreeing at least in the concept to be the driving force behind it. It can't be an individual, it's gotta be a group. And I think that once we see what is available and through some of these other environmental organizations that have as their charge looking at invasive species on the eastern end of Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence River, that, we stand a pretty good chance of at least getting a better understanding of this stuff. And hopefully in the years to come, with enough scientific minds looking at this, and interest on the part of property owners and governments such as St. Lawrence County and the townships that surround these lakes, that we will be able to get a better handle on it. And hopefully something will come that will enable us to eradicate these issues. The whole point is that, yeah, we can sit back and lament the fact that at this point in time, there's nothing we can do to eradicate this stuff. But by the same token, just to let it go is not going to further us and pushing us down the road for developing some way to eradicate it. So I just hope that this would allay some fears that we're going to spend $40,000, $50,000 worth of taxpayers' money and not seeing any results. I'm hoping that this will be the start of something, and that somewhere down the road there will be a good ending to this stuff.
Yeah, Mr. Arquette.
Thank you. I think there's another component to this, that we're making an effort to preserve some of our richest property value that we have in the county. Secondly, if I may, I believe that the individual that Chairman Sheridan is speaking to, that's spearheading the fundraising efforts, is Jane Ives. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Per Legislator Haggard's question, I've worked with Jane in a different capacity for her and I for a number of years, and I can tell you that she will be diligent in her task, and she's overseeing that. She will stretch every dollar as far as it can go on that behalf. Thank you.
Legislator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Dave and Mr. Lightfoot and Mr. Arquette, but I think it's a great idea that we're looking into this, but I don't think we're the body to do it. I do think maybe, like Mr. Lightfoot has reached out to numerous organizations. I think that's great. I think we're going down a slippery slope. Dave says there's 46 bodies of water. I know there's at least 5 in Colton, 3 in Parafield, 1 in Hopkinton. When are we gonna, that's just some in my district. We're all having the same issues. Are we gonna start doling out to all these places? That's my concern. The state just purchased 8,000 acres for $4.1 million, I believe, put in a conservation easement. I'd rather have them taking that money and putting it into actually the conservation of these waterways and looking into that. I think we need to look to that, and other methods is like the chemicals and stuff. I know in some of the southern states, they do use chemicals to get rid of the invasive species. There's many different types, and it does so without harming the fish and things like that. And we need to do something because our waterways are tourism here. And so I do agree, but I just don't think this is the right way to go about it. So I won't support this one either.
Mr. Smithers.
Yeah, I would agree that this is a difficult problem, and we do need to try to protect our resources. But I'm not sure that it's up to just us to do that. The homeowners are doing something that's great. I think I'd like to see a joint effort with the town of Fowler and the county. I don't know. I didn't hear where the town has put any money into this. So that's a question I have, I guess, for Bill. Do you have any figures of?
They have not offered to put any money into it, but I have not approached them. They're the ones that came to me and asked. So I imagine if they were going to put some money in it, they would have told me that they were going to put something up as well, but they haven't. So does that mean that they won't? No. I approached them. I think probably my guess would be if we were going to help out, then maybe the town would as well help out. So that's just a guess.
Mrs. Hagerty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without getting into crosstalk, I'd say to Mr. Lightfoot, thank you very much for all that work, because that's calling a lot of people. I too reached out to a couple people at Clarkson, and there's a complicated and way over my head way of going about this, and they have the expertise, and I'm delighted that he spoke to Professor Twist about that, because his name did come up with the people that I was speaking to. I would thank Mr. Lightfoot for that. That being said, I agree with Mr. Forsythe. The problem is this is here, this is now, and they have come to us and asked us. We've given it to one municipality. They have a solution that sounds like it fits in with the little I know about this being ecologically sound. And that's why I asked the question more about the money than anything else, is if they want to mow it down, don't let them do that. Because that's one thing I learned, that's a no-no. It just makes the stuff go crazy. But more to the point, Mr. Lightfoot's approach is how we have to go, because maybe we draw the line right here. I'm going to vote for this because I think they have come up with a good resolution to the immediate problem. And it takes a while to study these things. In the meantime, all this damage is being done, and if we can contribute somewhat to getting it under control for this year, I think that's a good thing. But once again, I appreciate how much Joe did looking into this, and I will certainly, I'd love to be involved in helping out, but I'll certainly bring back any information to the town and the village pot stamp too, if there's anything that they can do, because we have a lot of water. We all have a lot of water. Thank you.
Mr. Ray.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to support this, but I would, I really believe that we need to develop a countywide comprehensive plan in which, when the 36 different bodies of water come to us, that we have criteria, that we have rules on how much the property owners are going to put up as their match, how much the local governments are going to put up as their match, and and attempt to get grant funding when that's possible, which is why I really believe that the Environmental Management Council needs to make this their major priority, because we've got a lot of lakes and rivers in this county. And by bringing Dr. Twist, who I know, who's the head of the Great Rivers Institute at Clarkson, and our scientific community involved, it can help us develop a real plan, a rational plan, and one that maximizes our resources as opposed to the current one-shots that don't really address anything and don't provide us with any hope that we're not going to be back 10 months from now dealing with the same question, with the same bodies of water, with no answers. And the many Adirondack communities have used the herbicide that has been mentioned, and it's been found that it works and it doesn't harm the rest of the ecosystem. But of course, it takes a lot of education, and some lake associations are not going to ever agree to it, so, having the Environmental Management Council take a look at the Black Lake study, the Norwood study, other studies that have been done to try to come up with a, ranked choices of what works, what has the biggest bang for its buck, is vital. And, I would ask our county planning director, if he's watching tonight, we need to assign this as a task and bring these minds together and come up with a real plan on what we're doing and how we're doing it. And so each of these communities, when they come and put the arm on us and say, do something for, you name it, Lake, we can say, okay, here's the criteria, here's what your property owners group is gonna have to contribute, here's what your town is gonna have to contribute, and here's what you can expect from us as our contribution.
Okay. Any other discussion? I'll be voting against the resolution, although I do appreciate the method of harvesting, that actually pulling the weed works. It's limited, they don't do the whole lake, so I don't know what the rate of spread is. I believe I voted against the Black Lake one because the harvesting, the way they do, actually doubles the actual problem. The other arguments have been made. Every body of water has some type of invasive species. This is a lot bigger than St. Lawrence County. I will remark that any herbicide that is used actually becomes resistant. I failed to, I'd have to see the actual work, but I doubt that not everything survives after putting a herbicide in a body of water. Something else dies, I can guarantee it. So I'm concerned, much like Legislator Perkins and Mr. Forsythe, will be that we spend money here. And then the next one, I jokingly called up Mr. Lightfoot after seeing Bill Sheridan's resolution, and I told him that my neighbor's pool had no foil, and when he sponsored a resolution, take it out, but I don't see it here. It's just a sarcastic joke, which I'm not sure Mr. Lightfoot appreciates.
I called him and he said you must have been drunk when you looked at that pool.
So, I think you had something to add, Mr. Lightfoot?
I do. I just want to say that the topic that Legislator Reagan suggested is the whole idea behind this, is to get the expertise of everybody, get the support of the public, get the support of the towns, and get going. I'm not going to sit here and say that the planning board and the EMC ought to be telling the towns or the county either how much money, if any, is going to be devoted to this or should be, and how much each individual town, per capita ought to be contributing to this. I think that you've got organizations, you've got a partnership for the regional invasive species management that's called PRISM that handles that Eastern Lake Ontario St. Lawrence River corridor that I'm talking about. They are into grants and in innovative ways of financing these things. So it isn't something that I certainly don't want to see the county get saddled with, being the piggy bank or something like this. Nor do I think that we can expect the towns to do the same. You've got towns, the town of Rossee has about 800 people in it. You can't expect the town of Rossee is going to pony up significant monies to address this kind of an issue. It's got to be done, as Dave said, through the federal government, through the state government. Those are the two entities that we should be concentrating on to fund whatever needs to be funded to control, if not eradicate this. And that's my feeling. I think that getting Dr. Twist on board with something like this, somebody who has experience in obtaining grants, who has had success in obtaining grants from the DEC, that it's a big step. And I think what it will need is a little bit of time to see how it works. I'm hoping that next year by this time, things will be well underway towards some serious investment in time and energy, and if it takes money to get rid of the problem. Because like Tony said, if people's waterfront gets clogged up with this stuff, and I think Dave mentioned it too, that property values are going to decrease. Already on Black Lake, people are looking at reductions in their assessments. And you can't blame them at all. They can't use the water in front of their camp. So one other thing, NIPA is also inquiring of the DEC what they can do to eradicate or lessen the effects of some of the invasive species that they're starting to see on the river. One of those happened to be in Goose Bay down in Jefferson County, where they did use the chemicals. They did, I don't want to say eradicate it, but they really cut it down tremendously. So, and then one last point. You mentioned that half of the stuff that gets cut up floats down the river. There's no evidence to that at all. There's evidence that some of it, once it's not chopped up, it's cut off. That yes, if you cut something, you may get a particular particle or a leaf or a piece of the vegetation that is going to separate from what you're harvesting and what is left and float down the river. But it doesn't by any means mean that half of what you harvest is getting cut up and floating out into the St. Lawrence or whatever. So I just caution you on using what we think is a good measure. In any event, hopefully with the county board, with the interest of the other people, with the scientific people, with the DEC, with the federal government, we can do something to not eradicate it, but ameliorate it.
So there wasn't any talk about stuff floating down the river. It's when you cut it, where it was one head, two heads appear. I think that was Mr. Perkins' allegation that when we were talking about your resolution. Mr. Denisha.
There's nothing scientific that I found that would lend credence to that.
Mr. Denisha.
It's been said, and I mentioned it at the government fair when we were discussing the Black Lake money. And, it's waterfront property is probably the biggest part of our tax base in St. Louis County. Whether it's Black Lake, St. Louis River, Cranberry Lake, Trout Lake, Sylvia Lake, so, and I think it's good that we do something because it does impact us. However, I am concerned that, we've done it for Black Lake. I'm going to, I was in favor of doing it for Black Lake. I'm going to go in favor of Sylvia Lake. I think it's the right thing to do, but I'm not sure who brought up how many bodies of water we've got in the county. So everybody comes in here and says, we'd like $15,000, $30,000, whatever, significant amount of money. I would like to suggest, and I think Legislator Lightfoot and Reagan hit on it. We need to get the Environmental Management Council involved, and we need to get the DEC, we need to get people that are knowledgeable in this and get, because we can't beat this as a board. We don't have the means. So what I would like to suggest is that we, after this evening, that we have a moratorium on any more funding. I think that's necessary. If we do that, if we don't, we're going to have, and And with the moratorium, it would be thought that we would hand this over to the Environmental Management Council, get the people that would be involved in it, deal with it that way.
Mr. Forsyth.
Just a logistics question. The whole board meeting will be September 13th. The funds will be available after September 13th on Zoom. And it's not on whether they spend it or to reimburse, it's just, we're gonna write a check. Is that what we're planning on, just whatever the account is? Is that the assumption? I don't.
Yeah, oh, yes, certainly the answer.
Unless the resolution prescribed a certain way or a certain reconciliation or any of those types of things, they would submit an invoice and we would pay.
Okay, so they have to submit an invoice for the quarter.
How we can.
Okay, good, okay, I'd like to at least see that, I think. The other thing I keep thinking is September 13th. I don't know the makeup of Sylvan Lake as opposed to like the other areas. Are they mostly seasonal? Are they year round? I don't know.
To answer your question, Dave, if I may, Chairman.
Sure.
I don't know as to whether this money can be used this year. It's getting late.
Yeah.
And then she also talked about the COVID issue. So I was under the impression that we would, and I told her in no uncertain terms, probably is not going to be happening in the future. I said, don't expect it to be something that's going to happen every year. But I said, we'll try to help you. And I also mentioned to her that I think we can roll it. If you don't spend it this year, then it'll count for next year's effort. And at this particular time, it's really pushing it, thinking they're going to take care of all this next month or so. So I think that's, I don't know, I'd have to get an opinion from an attorney, or maybe we know right here. Can it be used for next year?
That's what I thought about Black Lake. That's the impression they had.
And I would tell you now that that's when they would be using it, would be next year, not this year.
So in that way, you would have a couple of options in terms of providing it to them next year, budgeting accordingly, or on their end, if we were to provide it to them this year, they could roll those funds over in their budget. That would not be our, we would make a payment, and that would be the conclusion of our interaction on that transaction.
The other thing, if I may, Chairman, I don't think that group can accept the funds. I think it would have to be run through the town of Fowler. And then they would spend the funds on behalf of that organization.
Well, it's a town power.
So it is the town of Fowler, but yet Fowler's not putting up any money at all.
Officially, they haven't offered it. They asked for it, but they didn't offer it.
Anyone else? So I'll just reiterate, the two solutions, the Black Lake, I think was faulty in the methodology of actually solving the problem. And I think as Mr. Forsyth pointed out, what percentage of the lake, you don't get it all, how much spreads. I like the idea, but the biggest thing is this problem is so much bigger than St. Louis County. It's statewide. It's not even just statewide, it's federal. And so the monies, the research and everything is much bigger than the planning department, much bigger than our local EFC. And I think that by reaching out to our local efforts, that maybe we can stimulate some action on the federal level. But this is going to be a runaway. Moratorium means my neighbor's pool's not getting covered, Larry. So it'll be one thing after another. The fact that the town of Fowler's not putting up any money is very discouraging also. So let's vote on this. Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsyth,
No.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Smithers,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
No.
Akers,
No.
Fay. I'm sorry.
No.
Haggard,
Yes.
Piacco,
Yes.
Arquette,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
No.
9 yes, 5 no, 1 absent.
Okay, so the resolution passes. So let's move on to vacancy review committee.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I'd like to offer a verbal resolution if I could. Can I do that at this time?
it's allowed, I guess, yes, go ahead.
Thank
I
you.
didn't know the proper procedure. Go ahead, Mrs. Taylor.
I didn't either. I'd like to offer a resolution that we call a moratorium on spending money towards invasive species until after we have had a study done through all the things that Legislator Lightfoot has suggested.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Denisha. Discussion on the verbal resolution about a moratorium on spending on invasive species. Is it just aquatic?
No, I can make it all. All invasive species.
Ticks and then
The
no?
sky, everything. I don't know.
So you've heard the resolution, discussion.
Oh, did you get that?
Everybody clear on the resolution? Invasive species, in general terms, aquatic and
Yeah.
terra firma.
Terra firma,
Until when?
until we've gotten recommendations from either our, the committees that we called upon, or, a study's been done, that we need to make well-planned, informed decisions. And, both Mr. Reagan and Mr. Lightfoot talked about the parameters.
Okay.
That's what I'm asking.
Mr. Speller's discussion.
I would have to agree with the comments that this is a much bigger problem than just St. Lawrence County. So that this does make sense to have a moratorium until we get some input, and also appreciate reaching out to more authorities on this. That's absolutely the right way.
Yeah, Mr. Lightfoot.
And I think that's the only way. We can't go to the top. We can't go to the federal government and expect that, only St. Lawrence County is going to convince Senator Schumer to pony up whatever it is that we would need. Obviously, he was here in the past, made some kind of assurances that things were going to happen, and nothing has happened. I think if we start out with the small group, this board, and move it out so that we have a much larger group of people in St. Lawrence County with expertise, without expertise, with a will to do something, that we convince our local representatives, and let's move it along, the DEC, to the federal government. Let's see what we can do with that. We can't do it by ourselves.
Mr. Forsythe.
Well, I'm just Googling milfoil success stories, and there are some. Skaneateles Lake looks like about the closest one. And the final thing is, it sounds like the pulling option is probably the best option from what I'm seeing quickly. Interesting tidbit, the milfoil group was eventually able to obtain, and to get it early, not late, get it early. A $100,000 grant from the State Department of Environmental Conservation, along with $30,000 from the town of Skaneateles. The town contributed to the problem, as well as $70,000 from the town. So it's a collaboration of all three. And that's where we have to go. To just throw $15,000 into a pot, it's not going anywhere. I think we're wasting it. But if it's a collaboration, then I can see us really kicking it. So just, there are success stories. Not getting that in.
Mr. Reagan.
Thanks for pointing that out, Dave. And I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is studies have been done on the milfoil issue on bodies of water throughout New York State. And it's more of a matter of compiling them, looking at the recommendations, taking an Army Corps of Engineers study that Senator Schumer had done, and then taking those recommendations. The missing piece was Senator Schumer got money to do a study, and then no one ever went back to him and said, okay, here's what the study recommends. Could you give us the money to implement the study? And that, he's the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. If ever there was anyone in a position to make available funds to implement a study that he personally had done, this would be it. But I think we need a bipartisan effort to bring together our communities, our scientific community, our political community, in order to marshal public opinion and ask our federal representatives to give us the resources to help address this problem that's facing so many of our bodies of water.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, yes.
Could I please ask Mr. Denisha to be the co-chair, since this was his idea and I opened my big mouth and said something about it, but I want to give credit where credit is due.
What would you like to ask?
I'd like to ask Mr. Denisha if he would please be the co-sponsor of this resolution that I'm offering.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Denisha is co-sponsor of that verbal resolution. Okay. So on the moratorium, on the question of the moratorium on this resolution, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay. So next up is our vacancy review committee, the annual vacancy. If you look, we're going to actually.
Dylan's gonna hand those out to you. Each year, I like to provide you with both a status update of the reinstatement of the vacancy review committee, its value to the process, and then typically make a couple of recommendations or affirm a couple of actions the board has taken that demonstrate why it's been helpful, but also what that has meant. And over the years, since 2015, it's changed in its purpose. And you'll see that a little lower when we talk about the best performance years. So I always include a little bit of history for those tuning in or hearing about the annual analysis for the first time. And long ago, the Vacancy Review Committee was in operation, and then it went out of kind of service by that process for about 4 or 5 years. So the board coming in 2015 wanted to reinstitute the committee. Our recommendation was, could we rotate legislators through that, giving everyone an opportunity to have discussions with departments directly about their needs for staffing. That part has been tremendously successful, often hearing and learning a lot more about department activities than just about the position. So it's really lent itself to a process where you also get a little bit more information about the departments that are included that month. So that generally talks at the top. Resolutions, it references that actions the board has taken over the years to affirm the essential hiring freeze, to provide for opportunities for modest adjustments to the process, but overall keeping in place the Vacancy Review Committee. So also thinking about 2020, because that's what this review is for, what was provided at that time was 2 opportunities. One was to create temporary positions in situations where either there weren't enough staffing, so we were at full staff, we needed more, such as public health and a few other places, or we had some positions that really needed additional support in the transition to either retirement, departure, or during leaves. So the board was very generous, not only in keeping all staff in St. Lawrence County employed during COVID-19 response last year, but also provided for temporary positions, granted me the authority to create them and fill in to meet operational needs. I can give you the total on that at this point has been 43. And I can also provide you, if you'd like, with department by department summary of those. So the sunset on that was December 31st. We had a conversation early in the year about continuing that practice because it was successful, because those needs had not subsided, and because we also were seeing retirements of long tenured positions that need to have someone in before they leave. And I think that was one of the challenges in county government for many years, was the chair was cold before someone came to sit in it, and the learning curve, the onboarding, all of that is tremendously challenging when the role that they are asked to take in county government is substantial. So both of those have been tremendously helpful in departments, both having short staff, having staff out for a variety of reasons, one of which may be COVID, but overall to be able to meet operational needs. So that being said, looking at your chart, we are one position different from last year. So we thought it was a fluke because of COVID. There was not a lot of mobility associated with positions. Our prior averages hovered between 150 and 165. Last year, they dropped to 136, and this year they're at 135. So my hope is that we've seen, that difference in changes of annual adjustments to the positions. So that was just under a 1% change over last year. Then you can also see over the years, there have been the different levels of positions to be filled. An immediate fill, the board took a position, a pretty firm position years ago, about 60-day fill, and then it was increased to 90. And the departments had the opportunity to come in and say, while I recognize that's a policy of the board, I'm asking for you to allow me to do it immediately for these reasons. And the board could make a determination, most of the time agreeing with the department, but in some circumstances saying, could you wait 30 days, could you wait 60 days, or they would be asking well enough ahead that they could wait 90 days. So a variety of those, and they're captured here by percentage. You can then see the changeover percentage from last year, which in most situations is negligible. In the 90 days vacant and the denied, we did see an increase in the held withdrawn with positions. If you recall, there have been 17 positions added in social services, and another 15 were requested that I put on hold to allow for the folks coming in to be trained. So that really is most of the reason for that held withdrawn category being a little bit higher than you're used to. I also like to take all 6 years provided together and give you an idea of the change over the average. So I referenced that in our total positions. We've dropped down to 151 from that 155, 160 number that we had been. So it is, as that number diminishes, we're keeping people longer. We're keeping people either through the organization, but we're not seeing those departures. So we didn't make any great changes in our best performance year. Last year, we saw best performance year improved in the 90 days vacant category. So let me explain this a little bit as well. So the immediate fill position of the board early on was to delay those. So a high percentage in that would not be good. So we were looking for the lowest percentage in that year. You can see this year it's 72%. But also you can make an argument, in many departments, if not all of them did, for why they needed those positions filled immediately. But that number should be low with the policy of the board. So the best year we had was 30%. This year you can see we had 72. 30 days vacant and likewise. So as you scroll down, the 90 days vacant, our best year was 4%. That 25% in that 60-day vacant range was really the area where the board's policy prescribed that that was the goal. And so the best year we had doing that was in 2016, 2017. So 1 year after the committee was put back into place. So you can see the numbers there. You can see that average is coming down a little bit. Wanted to let you know we had 13 positions that were abolished, but we're filling positions. Our ratio right now between positions created to positions abolished is about 3 to 4 to 1. So for every position we abolish, we're creating between 3 and 4 positions this year. That's remarkable and very different from years past. But I can also tell you, going into budget this year, the 2021 budget had 809 positions, and as of August 18th, we're at 840 positions. So that's going to also have an impact when you see both the projections for the 2021 budget and the 2022 budget in the next month or so. That being said, the next item that we have been providing to you is the vacancy savings. We don't make an effort because there are so many variables to capture the fringe benefit savings. The salaries alone For 2020 to 2021, we're looking at 1.6 million in savings. Now that's pretty close also to that position number I gave you. That's only $17,000 less. The year prior, it was substantially different, coming in at 300,000 different. So kind of a change, kind of a different approach than the year prior. So rolling over to your second page of this report, 2 recommendations this year, very modest. I did already speak to one of them on the temporary position component. I think it's been a very useful tool in working with departments to make sure the work gets done. The public is very informative when we aren't completing the work that they expect of us. And so this has been able to bridge those gaps. This has been able to fill in those places where otherwise we would have to tell folks they'd have to wait. Because in many, if not everything we do, there's a substantial training and learning curve attached to it. So the second one was, again, that transition to allow those overlaps. And I encourage you to continue to think about that, hear departments out, and to look upon those favorably, because they're pretty careful when they choose to make that request. What we've also tried to do, just as an aside, when we look at those percentages, if a position is vacated and it's not going to be until even the resolution comes before the board, if that 30 days is going to be met, we go ahead and try to give them credit for that. Because regardless, that position will be vacant for that period of time. And there should be a note attached to that, because that's also part of your vacancy savings. So you can start to see where some of those impact our overall totals. So then this year, I decided to give you some staffing summary statistics. You can see they're highlighted in bold, the greatest or the highest reporting category. So St. Lawrence County is 59% female and 41% male. Our age range goes from 20 and probably a little bit younger to over 70. And our largest group is in the 50 to 54-year-old range at 145. But you can see the categories and also by which the generation of folks in those categories as well. Similarly, if you drop down below, the retirement tiers, we don't have any tier 1s anymore. So I thought there were still a couple, but we're at 0. Our bulk is tier 4. I think that's a lot of what municipalities are seeing right now at 397 for us. But also coming up very quickly is the tier 6, which doesn't have the vesting that we are used to in up to tier 4 and a little in tier 5. Also, though, remarkable in this report to me, and I'm certain for all of you, is the years of service. So when you look at 48.2% of our workforce is in their 0 to 5 years of service. We have had, I think there was a phrase that I can't recall at the moment, but a phrase of talking about the retirement age of a lot of our workforce and seeing a lot of those folks retire and a lot of new folks coming in at all levels of county government. So that was a pretty remarkable. In those other 3 categories, at 6 to 10 year, 11 to 15, and 16 to 20, hovers right above that 10% mark. And I would be falling into that 16 to 20 year. I would be one of the 122 employees that we have. So you can also see, though, those numbers in the 31 plus category. We used to be quite heavy in that category, and now we sit at 23, which amounts to only 2% of our workforce. So that whole societal change of how long folks are staying in their jobs is changing, and this is a reflection in my mind of what that's starting to look like here.
Mr. Forsythe.
Question, Ruth. Tier 4 to tier 6, the retirement contribution to the employer, is it less?
Have Johnny answer that question?
I'd be interested in that.
We can get that for you.
I know the benefit is quite a bit less, so I
It is
assume the
quite a bit less.
contribution would be less.
I'm sorry, so you want to know?
The difference between tier 4 and tier 6 for employer
Contribution, would it be a less contribution or staying the same? Or?
I think tier 4 right now is averaging around 9%, and tier 6 is averaging, well, tier 6 depends on, tier 6 is 8%.
So
for the employer.
Tier 5 is just for a moment in time as well. Okay. And then just so that you understand, certainly we have over the last year and over this year, all 7 of our unions have and will come up for negotiation. Just trying to give you a little bit better picture of how many employees are represented by each of our unions. So I'd like to always take the opportunity when I can to improve your working knowledge of what the landscape looks like here. And I thought the annual vacancy review analysis was a good opportunity to do that. Are there any questions, concerns?
Excellent.
Okay, thank you. And I have the vacancy tonight as well. Let me go ahead.
Yep.
Okay, so I took an extra step in this process for this vacancy, and Chair Denisha of the Buildings and Grounds Committee and legislators Arquette and Lightfoot got to hear this twice. So we took the opportunity to have in our discussions about upcoming projects and the dialogue necessary to move things forward in terms of the projects. So one of the things that came up in that discussion and then proceeded to Vacancy Review Committee was the opportunity to request the board consider bringing in a buildings and grounds supervisor, which most closely reflects the work we're looking for this person to do. Probably to most folks, this would fit the clerk of the works designation. Someone who can move our projects along. What we've done, and I think it was out of the times that we were living in, over the last 5 years, our projects by and large have been handled by the departments where they occur. So as an example, the interoperability radio project. We did not bring on someone to assist with the installation of, I believe, over 7 towers over a 3-year period that we still are plugging along, trying to get the resources together. And that was a complex project because not only were we trying to avoid county government having to have input, so we were quilting this barrage of funding from grant sources, from aid sources, from a whole host of different funding opportunities to pay for it, and then also trying to get the work done. So fortunately, we're not in a bad spot, but that, had I the knowledge I have now, I would have asked you in 2016 to provide an assistant or an opportunity like this for our department head. As you know, all of our department heads carry very busy schedules and have a lot of work to accomplish. Asking them also to manage a capital project is more than I think is wise on our behalf. So in looking at the project you looked at last month at the Public Safety Center, with about 3 projects coming forward, which that will include, if the board is looking upon it favorably, the jail, principally the sheriff's or the matron's house there, that I believe it's properly called the sheriff's house, the warehouse, potentially addressing the family court space. All of those will be ongoing projects that need oversight. So this position I would envision taking first on the public safety complex. That's our most aggressive timeline in terms of trying to move forward with an internal project, and all of these will be. I would also give you the example of the jail project. We took staff completely out of their roles in county government and put them in the jail project. While I recognize that's a large scale project of $30 million at the ceiling, we reassigned our staff completely to that and backfilled their roles. They were focused and they delivered on time, under budget project that will have benefits for this county for years to come. So in this situation, what I'd really like to do is be able to bring someone in part-time. And should that be a concern in terms of will they have more work to do than they have time, I would give you updates periodically about how they're doing and how well that's serving the purpose. What I'd like you to consider the opportunity for us to do is to bring in someone with that being their sole focus. They are the point of contact, they watch the budget, they see the change orders, they do the punch list, and they have the conversation with all the contractors as our liaison.
Go ahead.
We also had 3 outposts going on.
We do.
I just don't think 21 hours is going to do it.
Well, and that's what I also mentioned. If it won't, I'll come back and see it.
I like your optimism, but I think if you're looking for a clerk of works to handle all these, no way. Just for traveling back and forth, and odd stand up the eye. But yeah, let's try.
Yes. Any other questions?
Come on, we're trying.
Okay, so moving on now to the county administrator's report, if that's okay. Just to give you a bit of a picture, like I like to on the weeks that we don't have a COVID-19 update from Jolene or from Dr. Williams. Our new total today is 8,160. We've gone from the middle of July averaging 2 per day to now 6 per day. Over the weekend, we saw a slight reduction to case totals in the 20s instead of in the 30s. What that means yet, it's hard to know, but always positive to see those drop a bit. We saw, I believe, over 100 cases since Friday. We will now proceed with daily reporting on the weekdays. So we also are looking to improve our graphics, improve the information we're putting out to the public. So if you have any suggestions or you have any concerns in looking at this for months at a time now, let us know and we'll try and address those and get some cleaner. It's going to still have the same information and if not better information for the public. Do you have a question?
Go ahead.
A little bit more specific on the vaccinated people getting it again, or for a second time.
So
It seemed like national average, I think he said, was like 2 or 3% of vaccinated people are getting it.
That's
On the third vaccine?
I'm not hearing that, it was like 9% of, they're saying that Pfizer is effective like 91%
now.
And
okay, because the last time I asked it, it was like 2 or 3.
So Dr. Williams said
I'm hearing-
2.5% the last time in our public health meeting, from information he had seen from Israel, that it was more like 9 to 10%.
Okay. 'Cause
But
I'm hearing a lot.
they're
more
not
people
ending
that-
up in the hospital.
That's right.
They're actually testing, many testing positive, not aware that they have that. This is.
Yeah, we can get some more specific and keep it current. Happy to.
And they don't.
Comment?
No, I wanted to ask for
Okay, you have a question?
about the reporting. Did that require some sort of special software or anything to go back? This is reporting from public health that you're asking.
It's a combination, yes, of reporting from public health and the planning office doing the maps. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so they're going back to daily?
Yes.
Wonderful.
During these days.
Good.
Yep, and we'll catch it up on Monday from the weekend.
Terrific.
Okay.
So this is mimicking what happened in the UK with the Delta. Big surge, and then in 2 weeks a drop off. If we're going, hopefully, 31 down to 6 per day is significant.
Any other questions right now? So the Pfizer vaccine received FDA approval, regular approval, which I think in some of the vaccine hesitance has been stated as one of the reasons why folks were concerned. So hopefully that will see another % or 2 or 5 of folks in the county getting vaccinated. Our report today indicated that full vaccination status, St. Lawrence County has 50.7. Those with the first dose is 53.7%. And our positivity rate, because that also is being pointed out in our graphics now, is 5.61%. So certainly a change from a few weeks ago. I will tell you, even within county government, last week, starting Thursday, we haven't seen cases on staff in almost a time where you notice and start to worry. Well, that has been remedied because as of Thursday, we had our first positive case, and now I have 6 departments, 1 with 2 units who have cases on staff. One of which is our DMV, and so there is 10 folks quarantined. So that was going to impact the closure of one of our satellite offices. Our county clerk is working right now to try and keep those open, but also that may delay phone calls, that may delay responses, things of that nature. But working very hard right now to try and keep all those offices running while folks work through their quarantine. So we also are seeing a challenge with the removal of the essential worker status. So that is a challenge for us. I've talked with Jolene about that, received several questions about it. She has indicated that the Department of Health is looking at what their essential worker guidance might look like. Not indicating they will or they will not, but that could become a challenge for us. With the jail, with the number of operations we have 24/7, we really need to be able to have folks able to work. So I'll keep you posted. I'll get back up to where I used to report to you on how many total on staff. We have acquired our own cleaning equipment, so I don't think that will require us to bring in outside folks to do that type of fogging and cleaning. We haven't seen the same stress placed on that we did early on with the surface cleaning and the plexiglass. We're not seeing that same. It's more about mask wearing and distancing. So certainly things to be aware of. I did make the request of the group to reconsider returning to masks, as public health is now recommending that in indoor facilities that occur. And with this change in our status and our staff, I just wanted to call that to your attention once again to identify the interest for the board's election to return to masking indoor facilities or to remain where we are, which currently is if you're unvaccinated, you need to mask, or if you're visiting the courts in this building, if you are vaccinated, you are not required to mask. to come into the buildings.
Mr. Bishop.
On the report, last week I reposted, but when I looked at the report, I saw the number of positive cases. So it got me thinking, because I know there's been a lot of discussion about folks who are vaccinated that are.
It's a breakthrough type.
Yes. And what percentage or what number of those count for? Number that we reported. So I asked Ruth if she could give me that information. The number of folks that have been the number of positive cases, new positive cases, that were occurring with folks that are already vaccinated, which I was amazed. There are no names attached to it. Would there be any value? And my question, this is why I asked, would there be any value to put that number out with the report?
It was remarkably higher than you thought, wasn't it?
It was, much so. So I guess I would just like to throw that out, see if there's any value.
Sorry.
I think this is anecdotal, of course, but we have a lot of people with health conditions in St. Lawrence County, and we have an aging population. Some people are older than others, okay? So I think those two things may be factors in this, because my understanding is that vaccinated people who are testing positive are immunocompromised in some way, or have age-related issues of some sort. It would have to include, I mean, you can't look at one portion of it, they're vaccinated. It would have to include, their age range. And I think part of it is because we have a lot of people with diabetes in St. Lawrence County. We have a lot of people who are older. That might help. More factors added into that.
So Dr. Williams released a statement Wednesday after our meeting. And it was, if you're up on the situation, it was very in-depth and detailed. But really what he didn't emphasize, what I suggested, was virtually everybody that's ended up in the emergency room is unvaccinated. And that's the message that has to be sent for adults.
Correct.
We won't speak about children. But certainly for adults, that's what they're finding in the ER room and also in hospitalizations.
And the dead people.
No one's dying in St. Lawrence County. We're still at 97 deaths or 99, whatever it is.
Right. There are
So I don't
people
know
dying elsewhere, and primarily 99% of those people are unvaccinated.
I don't know that number.
Okay.
But that's what I thought, that because it was, I understood it because, and we all would, because this is what we're hearing every Monday and following it, and maybe much of the population. But the point that needed to be emphasized was everybody that's showing up at St. Lawrence Health Systems that's ended up in the emergency room or in their hospital bed is unvaccinated. It's not 100%, but it's like 99. So, Jim, Mr. Amy.
I think that's an excellent point. Thank you for bringing it up. And I would urge Ruth and our public health director to bring that to the media so that they can bring that to the public. Because I think we need to get across to people that, if you are unvaccinated, you've been playing the odds, and with this new Delta variant that's more contagious, it's becoming riskier. And, people need to think about, what their choices are going to be. And since, we're seeing an increase in the number of people going to the emergency room, and the bulk of those people are unvaccinated, that point needs to get across to that 50% of the public that has chosen not to get vaccinated. And I just think that that's something that needs to be stressed and understood so that people can make an informed choice.
So I'll just reiterate, the vulnerable population is age 65 and up. In St. Lawrence County, over 82% have chosen to get vaccinated. So, and of course, if you're looking at the county where only 50% is vaccinated, you have to encompass those that are under the age of 12, which the vaccine's not approved of, not been approved for. And then the limited number of individuals from 12 to 19. So those that are vulnerable, age 65 and up, in this county, 82% are vaccinated. So when Ruth, polled all of us about whether or not we want it to be, or, just like tonight, should the county system be actually asked to be masked, my argument would be it would be detrimental to people who are unvaccinated because they would say, I'm unvaccinated, even those that are vaccinated, now they gotta wear the mask, the heck with it, I'm not doing it. One of the things I read that the highest percentage of people that are unvaccinated are actually PhDs. So take that for whatever salt that is. So I think it would be, people are well aware that the vaccination has been available, is available in every pharmacy. The state side was an overwhelming success, and easy to get to, quick and very efficient. So people have made their decisions whether or not, but vaccination rates are actually up in the county. I think they've almost doubled. So I know if Jolene is on it, she could, on a daily basis. So obviously people got scared, and those that, people that got sick or whatever made the decision. So you've gotten more, but you've got a group that have made their own medical decision not to get vaccinated. So I think that those that have been vaccinated should not have to be punished to wear a mask. We may be told that the mask prevents that. So. Mr. Dinesh.
Use the data to argue with this year. When you've got 102, you have 102 for August, this was as of last week, 120 were fully vaccinated. That was positive.
In St. Lawrence County?
St. Lawrence County.
So that would have to represent 10%.
And there were 178 that were unvaccinated.
Okay, so of the 102, were they ill?
120.
Of the 120, were they ill?
I did not know.
Did they end up in a hospital? Because this is what they're finding is that those that are fully vaccinated are testing as much with COVID as actually unvaccinated. So the vaccine is preventing people from getting sick.
Yeah.
It's not preventing them from actually experiencing COVID.
Couple more things.
City stars.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have upped our COVID calls back to once a week. We had gone down to twice per month. Our vaccine group, who had been mobilized to provide the larger clinics in Ogdensburg, they're going to be pulling together to do the back to school events that you're seeing. We'll make sure to push those schedules out to you if you wanted to either stop out and see our public health staff when they're at those back to school nights, or just send them a note, I think encouraging the fact that they're putting in the time and they're getting back out there to do those vaccinations. Always appreciated. We understood today, and certainly you've probably heard, travel restrictions with Canada will continue until at least September 22nd. And this week, we're going to meet with the school districts again in public health. So I think that as we get closer to the school year beginning, there's a very wide open communication line with the school districts and public health. We don't have I guess a blessing or curse, depending on how you look at it, of the executive orders in place, identifying how we can and cannot behave. So I think it's helpful for more communication with the schools so that we all know where everyone is and what the facts of the information are. So that's my COVID update. I want to let you know that negotiations with the supervisors of Council 82 began last week. And as a reminder, there are 3 contracts, that one included, but also the deputies and the deputy supervisors that will expire at the end of 2021. Schedule, just an update on that. On Wednesday at 2, Buildings and Grounds Committee will meet to have that discussion in the Sheriff's House, but also a request has come forward about the historical designation. You often see those signs designating either locations or districts. There's always kind of been a stigma that this board or others before you have taken about the impediments that might cause to what needs to occur at that location. So want to have that dialogue and hopefully bring that to you in the future to have a conversation about whether or not designating this campus here on Port Judson Street would make sense for the county. I think there's some great benefits, but also understand the truth about what we can do to the buildings after those designations. So we'll have that discussion. Also want to let you know on Thursday, as a part of our budget discussions, the staff of real property and I will meet with the city of Ogdensburg to talk about the chargeback. So about a year ago, you may recall, we had the discussion. The city was in a challenging time with staffing in their office to deal with their real property charges. So our staff stepped in and has been billing them rather than the chargeback. The other municipalities provide the funding for that to the real property office on an annual lag. We're going to meet with them to determine, this year we've kept it the same because the budget was already done. But for 2022, if the service is still preferred by the city, like it's provided to the others, how we might manage that, whether it stays a bill or goes to a chargeback. So I'll give you an update after that as well. A follow-up on the request at the last meeting for a meeting on the opioid treatment program. I'll be meeting and certainly extend the invitation to anyone interested in sitting in with the President and CEO, David Acker, on September 3rd, around noon, I believe, to have a dialogue about their next steps. Because we will, in October, be a year into this process. So anyone who's interested, we'll make sure you have those details. For September.
May I ask a question about that?
Certainly.
Will our representative from the Board of Health be going to the meeting?
Community, BJ.
Acker.
Yeah, you're asking, will Jay Ulrich be there?
No, you.
Oh, sure. I'd like to.
Okay, thank you.
Just an update, I'm coordinating. I've brought to your attention that NISAC takes place on the same day as the September board meeting because of the holiday. I've coordinated with NISAC to have a room set up so that all the folks there, myself included, can attend the meeting virtually from that location. And I will be graduating from their County Government Institute or Dennis Pelletier Institute at that meeting as well. That was supposed to happen in January of 2020. So operations and services. We've been taking a look at getting you an informational update on redistricting prior to all the census blocks being finalized, all that information, just getting a status to you on where we are today to be provided to you in September. Then on finance, we'll finally have the broadband survey from a combination of Dank and ECC Technologies to let you know the results of those and to go through what those might mean and the opportunities that could come as a result of that. Any question on those? And then lastly, I just wanted to give you an update. I want to provide you with a recommendation tonight. Since the June board meeting, you all know that we've been receiving complaints with regard to our social services, specific to children's services. We have included OCFS in that discussion, and they've taken a look at both the original complaints which were coming in about employees acting as foster parents, as well as secondary about complaints associated with the department. So they've been helpful. They've given us a little bit of feedback, both from the case review done by the commissioner, by the county attorney's office, and the fact gathering we've done since those have come in. I will be recommending to you that a third-party review occur. And I just want tonight to get if there's any objections to that. But if not, I'd like to proceed with that and bring you actions necessary by resolution to the board. I also sat down last Thursday and again today with caseworkers to let them know that first, but also to be able to give them an opportunity to express their frustrations and concerns so that they have a voice to be heard in this process. I think part of the challenge that they expressed is they have to sit in silence while stories are shared, concerns are raised allegations are made about them in general and them specifically, make it very difficult when they can't respond. So what we'd like to do is make sure we're getting information about, out to the public about how those programs work without identifying information about the folks they're talking about, but also about how complex and challenging those situations can be. And also, as soon as they learn the laws and the regulations, they continue to change. We're 5 weeks away from Family First hitting the next threshold, September 30th. So that also, I think, is going to change the dynamic again. It would be great to have this discussion addressed. We can all improve and figure out where our challenges lie. So that I don't think necessarily a formal vote's required unless there's an objection. I'd like to move forward. They are tired, they are stressed, and the goals that they have, the state has provided them and has not changed to keep families together.
Are there any objections to having a third-party review of the situation in DSS?
I have a question about that.
Can we answer that one first, or is this concerning that?
It's concerning me.
Okay, this is higher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is that a state? When we say third
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
When we say third party, is that the state?
External, no. The
Okay.
state is already involved.
All right, thank you. That's all I need to know.
Mr. Lightfoot.
Just a comment. The members of this board are finding it equally difficult, as are our employees, to be silent on what's occurring and being unable to respond and being taken to task for that by certain individuals. So I think it's completely unfair to expect that we are going to make any comments at all, particularly in light of when you've got at least one investigation going on and another one contemplated. So just a point of interest, it's difficult on this side of it too.
And lastly, I'd like to share with you, Dylan's going to bring it up right now. I want to share with you an individual making a difference. And this relates to DSS. A 15-year-old from Colton Pierpont, Ashley McKinley, made and donated 50 teddy bears this summer with her grandmother, and is donating them to the foster children in St. Lawrence County. So we're really proud of Ashley. She brought them in. I was able to share them when I met with the caseworkers to take back immediately and get those in the hands of foster children. So while a lot of what we have to do isn't great news, is a challenge, there's some great people out there doing great things. So this is Ashley. Yay! So Mike is going to make sure to get that out there.
I'll do my best.
Right?
Yes.
All right.
Go Ashley.
Picture of it.
Yeah, we'll share that. I'll share that with you.
Mr. Reagan has a comment.
Can we do a resolution, or a presentation to Ashley to formally thank her for her efforts? I think it would mean a lot to a 15-year-old to be brought to the board and formally thanked.
Happy to do so.
She's probably had some great teachers at home.
She might have.
Yeah.
This crowd teacher in the room.
See, there are questions.
She has worked very hard on this also. And that concludes my report.
Okay, so we have old and new business. Anyone have any old business? This report's I just contemplating, I think. Okay, so we have,
Seven round? So we delayed the social services statistics, and so you all had an opportunity to take a look at them. As I mentioned to you, they'll continue to be work in progress as we evolve. If there's statistics there you'd like to see or that you don't think are necessary, I have Heather Rand with us tonight, who is going to go over, walk through them with you and answer any questions that you have. Heather?
Thank you. Good evening. I'll do my best to go through the department's July data report. And thank you to Dylan for some technical assistance by sharing your screen. Page 1, Child Protective Services. I'd like to point out the decrease in the number of referrals and the total children added. This is not unusual for summer months. We do expect an uptick when children return to school, but we are happy to see numbers are down. Moving to the middle of the page, indicated, unfounded, and family assessment and response. Our percentages have wavered a little, but they remained fairly consistent. I'll note that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, from their 2019 summary findings, found that across the United States, the average rate was about 16%. So we're not far off from their summary findings. The safety checks completed on time. This is the Child Protective Services caseworkers inputting the documentation for the safety assessments. We've seen an incredible increase since March, and it was 94% for the month of June. And I'm happy to report that it'll be higher next report out. I just received that today. Page 2, as expected, the average CPS caseload has decreased slightly with the reduction in the number of referrals coming in. And you see that again in the middle graph, the total caseload and referrals on a trend downward. The next set of charts speak to the cases by month per supervisor. So you'll notice that through most of the CPS units, the number of cases that the workers have has gone down. There are a couple of instances where the numbers have gone up, and there are various reasons for that. It would be difficult to speak to that specifically unless I were to look into that further as to who it was. I'll just note the training period. We are on track and doing well with training all of our new employees. We have several who will be ready the middle of September, and we have an additional couple that will be ready for the middle of October. And again, the closed cases, it just kind of, this chart spreads them out based on the years of service for the employee. Looking at page 4, preventative services. Again, you'll see a very slight reduction in the number of children in care. We typically don't have a lot of control over the number of children that are coming in, but there's been a lot of good work done to try to establish permanency faster. And in the middle chart, you'll see that in the month of July, we were able to discharge more children than entered care. Again, the bottom charts, average number of children in care. We're hovering around, we were hovering around that 330-ish mark. And we have seen a slight reduction. The average number of days in care, it notes that we're seeking additional clarification, and that is ongoing. So the number of children that are receiving preventive services in the home has been fairly steady. The caseloads are a little bit higher, but still appropriate. The number of cases per month by supervisor, you see fluctuations between 1 and 3 cases. Again, there are a couple of outliers, but for the most part, it's within a couple of cases and stabilizing. And again, looking at the training period on page 6, we are really targeting the middle of September for a small group of new employees to be ready. Cases closed for preventive services. Cases closed or moved to be closed when needed services by the family are completed and the risk within the home is reduced. So preventive cases typically close when court-ordered services are completed. If you look at the bottom of page 6, adoption activity, again, pretty steady, but what we like to see is the number of children that are freed for adoption is steadily increasing, and that speaks to the efforts for improved permanency timelines for children in care. On page 7, this is a breakdown of the number of children that are in foster care placements, certified foster boarding homes, kinship homes, institutions, supervised independent living programs, other, and of course, home on trial basis youth. This is something that I wanted to point out because it does speak to our family first goals. We have already met the threshold of 50% for kinship homes. We were at 54%, and we have already met the threshold for institutional or congregate care, which is to be below 8%, and we are at 4%. So those are important milestones that our children's services staff have worked hard to accomplish to date. On the final page, in our eligibility programs, you'll see an increase in SNAP recipients and a slight decrease in TA. In speaking to the staff in those areas, they referred to the emergency rental assistance program and the moratorium on evictions as part of the reasoning for the TA applications being down and SNAP benefits perhaps being increased with people out of work and on, potentially having less of an income as the threshold is lower for TA. 7 staff are doing the referrals to the ERAP program that I mentioned in addition to their regular duties. And I'll open it up for, I guess, any questions.
Anyone? Mr. Lightfoot?
Heather, how many cases do we have for temporary assistance that have exceeded the 5-year limit that the county and the state are responsible for? And in addition to that, how many cases have the state dropped and made the county responsible for the entire expenditure?
So that is a good question. I do not know the answer, but I will find out.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Ray?
Thank you. 2 points. One, could we ask that instead of initials on some of the programs that we just have what it is so that other people will be reading these reports who may not know what temporary assistance is and the nutrition program and others, so that it's a little bit more accessible to those who see this. Secondly, on the adoption activity, the children freed without adoptive resource. Refresh my memory as to what that is.
Sure. So the children that are freed without an adoption resource are children who have legally been freed, but for whatever reason, they do not have a foster parent or a legal guardian who's wanting to take permanent custody of them.
So what happens to them?
Well, we can, if they wish to be adopted, or if they do not have a choice being under the age of 14 and being freed for adoption, then we continue to look for what we call hard to place placements. So we have several agencies that we work with throughout the state who help us to locate families and individual providers who may be interested. So we seek resources outside of our county.
All right, let's back up a bit. So you got a child and you classified child as free without adoptive resource. What happened? Where is that child? Who's caring for it?
Foster care.
What's going on?
Well, the child is in foster care. The child's in the custody of the Commissioner of Social Services.
Okay.
The child would be placed in either a certified foster home that just is not interested in adoption, or the child could be placed in one of those other options, such as congregate care, institutional care, or a SILP, or an independent living type program. So it could be any of those.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wasn't quite sure of.
So Heather, what qualifies them as free? Do they reach a certain age, or is it a certain stability? Could you explain that to the legislative body? What makes them free?
Sure. So a child becomes freed when one or both parents' rights have been terminated to the child. And I say one or both because in some instances, the child has only one confirmed parent. So when the parent's rights have been terminated by the court, or the parent chooses or elects to surrender their rights, then the child becomes legally freed for adoption.
Okay. That's a great explanation. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Heather? Thank you for your report. It's very clear.
Have a good night.
All right. You ready for the executive session? So any more old or new business? Mr. Forsythe?
I think it falls under, I'm gonna try and do this. It's an old business, which I brought up to Ruth a couple of weeks ago. I was approached in my Lisbon Town Board meeting by the librarian. We went outside and talked library funding, and I sent an email out to everyone on the board. Years ago, we used to, $1 per person, I believe it was, $110,000. $1 per person to help the 19, I believe there's 19 libraries in St. Lawrence County. And when we call on rough times, tough times, whatever, that was one of the things. OCP used to come, the board used to come, there was a variety of, I remember the days well. One of the things she pointed out is we are one of the only counties, if not the only county, that doesn't give any sort of support to our libraries through that $1 per person. In the town of Lisbon, it would equate to about $4,100. It's not a ton of money to us, but to the libraries, they can do quite a bit. She asked, now that the county is doing better, maybe not to where we're supposed to be, but doing better, would there be opportunity to reinstate that funding? I said, well, I'll see what the will of the board is. And that's what I thought I would do, is see what the will of the board is. By the response I got to the emails, I got one that said it would support it. And I could go either way. I just wanted to throw it out there to just say, I looked into it, there's not a stomach for it at this time, or maybe there is. But it also got me thinking about something else. So the tax bills are gonna be going out next week, the end of next week. And I know when I buy my hunting license, there's an opportunity on the license, if I wanna donate to a wildlife fund, I can contribute $5 or whatever. Have we ever considered, for the outside funding sources, a little blurb in there? Yes, I wanna donate $2 towards the library, I wanna donate $10 towards sport, whatever. Have we ever considered anything like that? And leave it to each individual. To me, I don't mind spending $2 here, $2 there, whatever, but not everyone does, and I did. So, but it would give everyone an opportunity, and they could put a little check mark on each tax bill and say, yeah, I'd like to donate $5, $10, $20 to the library, or whatever. But I guess it's just something, it led to another thought, so.
It's like your school bill? Your wildlife fund?
We'll do it on county
No,
tax.
where's your wildlife fund thing?
It's on your hunting license.
Oh, on your hunting
You
license.
know, if you buy your hunting license, you go in $5.
I think it would be difficult to administer, wouldn't it?
Well, a couple of things. You may recall a few years ago, we passed a local law to insert the DMV language about going local. So the language that sits on the tax bill is very specific, and that could be handled through local law process. Let me look into that, see what I can find out.
It was just curiosity, and I don't know how anyone else feels, and if you wanna leave everything alone, leave it alone. But, I said I'd bring it up and.
Anyone else? So we do have a need for executive session for what items?
We do for litigation, personnel, which is the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation, and appointments.
Okay, entertain a motion to go into executive session. Made by Mr. Forsythe, second by Ms. Haggard. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
You gotta have a few minutes to it.
Did you want a bottle of water?
We're still waiting for the direction from Census Bureau on some of the specifics and the numbers that we're gonna need in order for us to do our job. But we don't meet again until September 13th, so that's a while from now as far as a full board. So at that meeting, I will be making it official from my appointments that I give out at the end of the meeting. But I just wanted everybody to know that the list is already available, and at least as far as I'm concerned. I'm gonna let you know that I'll have Joe Lightfoot will be the chair of it. We're gonna have Rick Perkins on it. We'll have Dan Fay on it. We'll have Kevin Akers on it. I'll be the ex officio.
Anything else to come before the board before we adjourn? Seeing none, motion to adjourn by Mr. Perkins, second by Mr. Deach.